If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 236, The Mysterious Passage. First Appraisal? Stop right there! Squirtle shouted and charged forward, shooting a water gun directly at one of the spinner rack. Yancy controlled Larvesta, using string shot against the other spinner rack to slow it down. Under Squirtle's efficient water gun attacks, the two spinner rack were quickly left dizzy and disoriented. They fled in panic with their injured bodies into the depths of the vines. The bound suite was saved. It looked gratefully at Squirtle and Larvesta, timidly thanked them, and bounced away. The next moment, a notification appeared. Mission objective: defeat/drive away 3 spinner rack in the Silk Thread Forest F3-F4 area, 3/3. Mission complete. Reward obtained, 30 silver coins. Yancy breathed a sigh of relief. 30 silver coins obtained. Although still far from 50 gold coins, it was at least a start. She controlled Larvesta to search around the battle area, looking for any dropped items. Deep in the vine shadows, in a place covered by thick moss and glowing mushrooms, something caught her attention. She controlled Larvesta to carefully push aside the hanging vines and moss with its antennae. Behind them wasn't a solid rock wall, but a gap barely large enough for a small Pokémon to squeeze through. From deep within the gap, a faint air current flowed out, carrying a strange scent. Hey? This place. I don't think it was here before. Did it just appear? Yancy controlled Larvesta to move closer. Squirtle followed curiously, looking at it with a puzzled expression. What is this place? The map doesn't seem to mark this passage. Yancy's heart stirred. She thought of those hidden paths and secrets in the game. This was probably some kind of hidden route. She controlled Larvesta to squeeze into the gap. Squirtle hesitated for a moment, then followed. The interior was narrow and winding. After walking a short distance, the view suddenly opened up. A small natural stone chamber appeared before them, completely enclosed by rocks and gnarled ancient tree roots. In the center stood a low, circular altar built from rough stones. The altar's surface was covered with a thick layer of dust. Its edges were carved with blurry, twisted symbols that gave off an eerie feeling under the illumination of faintly glowing mosses on the chamber ceiling. In the center of the altar was a shallow depression with smooth edges. That shape looked strangely familiar to Yancy. She controlled Larvesta to approach the altar and examine the depression carefully. Wait, she suddenly remembered something. She immediately opened her backpack and pulled out the stone with the ominous purple glow to compare. The shapes were almost identical. It was as if the depression before her was a custom-made base for this very stone. So this place is related to this stone? Could the pollution mentioned by that Zaytu in the guild and the black mist on Dragonair's body originate from a place like this? No, that shouldn't be the case. After all, this is just an early game dungeon. Squirtle came closer, looking at the purple stone and the depression on the altar. His face showed a confused expression. Yancy, what is this? Yancy controlled Larvesta to stop in front of the altar. I don't know either, but it looks like this is connected to that thing I have. Should she try placing the stone on it? Yancy was hesitant. She had a slightly ominous feeling. The stone glowed purple in Larvesta's virtual claws, and the depression on the altar seemed to silently call out to it. Try it? Or not? The streamer's heart felt like it was being scratched by a meowth. Behind her, Squirtle's eyes were full of confusion and unease. He hesitantly extended his claw, seeming to want to stop her, yet also attracted by the altar's eeriness. Streamer, just do it. What are you being cowardly for? Put it on and see. Maybe it's a hidden storyline. Don't. Feels like something bad will happen. Even Squirtle is panicking. Just as Yancy controlled Larvesta and decided to bring the stone close to the depression, Squirtle's action was actually faster than hers. Perhaps the altar itself radiated an attractive force, or perhaps simple curiosity overcame caution. His claw touched the blurry twisted symbols on the altar's edge one step ahead. Hum. The entire stone chamber shook violently. The thick dust on the altar was shaken off by an invisible force. Those strange symbols suddenly lit up with a dazzling, heart-palpitating deep purple light. As soon as the glow appeared, it instantly wrapped around Squirtle's body like a living thing. Squirtle's body stiffened. Those originally gentle eyes became hollow, directly losing all vitality. He turned his head mechanically, his movements as stiff as a puppet's, staring straight at Larvesta. His throat emitted unclear, low, muffled gurgling sounds frighteningly eerie. Holy crap! Squirtle got hit. Well, now, the turtle is being controlled. I told you not to touch it. These special effects feel like he's poisoned from eating toxic mushrooms. Streamer, run. The turtle's about to attack you. With her teammate suddenly becoming like this, Yancy's scalp went numb. Could it really be like the comments said? Would Squirtle turn against her? Dash. However, just then, the depression in the altar's center also erupted with an even stronger purple light. The glow rotated and twisted above the altar, forcibly tearing through the air and opening an oval-shaped void passage with edges flickering with purple lightning. Inside the passage was only pitch-black darkness. Nothing could be seen clearly. Only a cold wind carrying a heavy, ominous aura violently flew out from within, causing Yancy's larvista to shake. A strong sense of crisis instantly flooded into Yancy's heart. With things looking like this, whatever was behind this passage definitely wasn't anything good. Squirtle also seemed to wake up slightly from being blown by this sinister wind. The hollowness in his eyes faded somewhat, replaced by fear and bewilderment. He struggled to turn his stiff neck, looking toward that passage. His voice became intermittent due to the stiffness. Why Yancy, let's leave this place quickly. We can't go in. Inside there seems to be something very terrifying. Obviously. Did he even need to say that? Yancy pursed her lips and controlled larvista, looking at that dark passage with its eerie radiance, then looking at the abnormal Squirtle, who was clearly affected. At times like this, she had to acknowledge the advantage of being a player. No matter how dangerous the situation, she could always try. At worst, if she died inside, she could just reload and start over. This was the charm of being able to restart. With this mindset, she controlled larvista to carefully take a small step toward the edge of that passage. However, just as larvista's antennae were about to touch the roiling dark edge, a line of blood-red warning text suddenly popped up, occupying the entire center of the screen. A harsh alarm sound effect accompanied it. Warning! Special dungeon entrance detected. This space is in an extremely unstable state with chaotic laws. If you lose compatibility in this space, the spatial collapse will cause your current adventure record to be completely erased and unrecoverable. Confirm entry? Yes/no. In plain language, if she lost compatibility in this special dungeon, the entire save file would be destroyed. Yancy instantly froze. Her finger hovered over the mouse, and cold sweat broke out. That sense of pride and confidence from just moments ago instantly vanished. Holy crap, are you serious? If the save file was gone, that would be no joke. More than an hour of hard work to get to this point would disappear. The items collected, the rapport built with Squirtle, that troublesome dragonair she picked up, and that special stone would all vanish. The comments started flooding in. Save file disappears. Holy crap! The game is playing for keeps. Ha ha ha, the streamer's face has gone white. Too bad the streamer didn't go in. This penalty is too harsh. Who would dare enter? Looking at that crimson warning and feeling the cold wind blowing from the passage, Yancy controlled larvista's movements 10 times faster than when arriving. She pulled Squirtle away from the passage edge without hesitation. Then she decisively pressed no. The blood-red warning on the screen slowly disappeared. She let out a breath with some lingering fear, feeling her heart still pounding wildly. Good thing she didn't go in. Now she became obedient, more obedient than Squirtle. Seeing larvista retreat, Squirtle also seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. His stiff body relaxed slightly, but the fear and emptiness in his eyes hadn't completely disappeared. Clearly the purple light's influence still remained. He seemed to have lost some ability to speak. Yancy now had no desire to explore whatsoever. She just wanted to get far away from this cursed place. She controlled larvista, carefully avoiding that altar still radiating purple light and an ominous aura. She pulled the still somewhat dazed Squirtle and squeezed out through that narrow gap, returning to the previous F4 area. The remaining journey became exceptionally smooth. Or rather, Yancy simply had no interest in exploring anymore and just wanted to escape quickly. They soon found the stairs to leave the dungeon and return to the forest edge. Mission complete. Dungeon successfully explored. The system notification popped up, but Yancy felt no joy. She controlled larvista, bringing the stumbling Squirtle, and quickly returned to the bustling Wigglytuff Guild Hall. At the mission registration desk, Gumshoe still had that business-like appearance. After Yancy submitted the mission, he pushed 30 shiny silver coins onto the counter. Yancy collected the silver coins. She looked at the nearly empty yellow hunger bar for herself and Squirtle in the status column, and the weakness status icon appearing next to it due to hunger, indicating attribute reduction. She immediately pulled Squirtle toward a small stall in a corner of the guild hall that was wafting with food aromas. The stall owner was a chubby, smiling Snorlax. She opened the item menu and scanned it, quickly spending 10 silver coins to buy 2 foods that looked like long bread loaves with golden powder sprinkled on the surface. Obtained C-rank food, Stardust Bread X2. The two of them couldn't care about their image and found an unoccupied spot in a corner of the guild hall to sit down. Yancy controlled Larvesta, and Squirtle also picked up his share of bread, taking big bites. As the bread went down, the yellow bar representing hunger in the status column began rising at a visible speed. The weakness debuff icon also flickered a few times before disappearing. While watching the character's status recover, Yancy began summarizing into the microphone. "Guys, did you notice? This game really has a lot of detail. Just now, when fighting those last 2 Spinarak in the dungeon, we were both almost starving. The yellow bar was nearly empty. Squirtle's water gun felt like it couldn't even hit properly, and I felt my own operations becoming sluggish. Hunger apparently isn't just a simple attribute reduction. There seem to be some other debuffs too." The comments all agreed. Indeed, I noticed it too, the attribute reduction was obvious. Streamer, if you hadn't mentioned it, I wouldn't have noticed. Just now, Squirtle's movements were indeed slower. They made the satiety system this detailed. Yancy watched Larvesta eating bread, feeling somewhat regretful that this game wasn't advanced enough to let her taste what this bread was like. She continued, "Second point, this game's item variety is really quite high. Just now searching around that hidden stone chamber in F4, plus what we picked up from battles before, my bag now has 15 items. But unfortunately, out of those 15, 13 are unidentified all question marks. I have no idea what effects they have. That appraisal shop owner must be making a fortune every day. Then there's the freedom, really high. In combat, string shot can bind monsters and pull tree branches to hit monsters. In non-combat situations, there seem to be many emergent possibilities too. Like can string shot be used as a rope? Or to start fires? Too bad I only know string shot right now." Talking about this, Yancy couldn't help but complain. Third point. And this is what frustrates me most, my special character's starting condition is okay, but, can someone explain to me why my Larvesta still only knows string shot, this one skill? It's level 4 now. Still only knows string shot. Is this reasonable? I'm totally relying on Squirtle to carry. I should have chosen Torchic at the start. Ha ha ha, you like choosing hidden options. Why is your face red? A bug-type Pokémon that only knows string shot seems quite reasonable, though. Game dev, play if you want, quit if you don't. You just keep playing anyway." Clearly, the comments were once again filled with merciless mockery. Yancy sighed and resignedly continued eating bread. After finishing the bread, stamina recovered, and satiety was full. She glanced at her backpack, 25 silver coins remaining. Since she couldn't handle that 50 gold coin purple stone for now and couldn't enter that dangerous secret realm, why not appraise some other cheap stuff first? At least figure out what that pile of question marks in the bag were, right? Maybe there really were some usable, good items? At this moment, Squirtle's condition also seemed to have recovered quite a bit from eating. The hollowness in his eyes had faded, but he still seemed rather listless. She brought Squirtle once again toward that secluded corner of the guild hall. That Zeta was still draped in its deep purple cloak, sitting there like a sculpture. Yancy controlled Larvesta to step forward and directly selected to interact. Chapter 237, 238, Blacksmith Charizard and the Special Merchant. Yancy guided Larvesta over and initiated the interaction. This time, Zeta raised its head, eyes beneath the hood calm and serene. It didn't mention the purple stone from their last encounter. It acted as if they'd never met before. Yancy fished out a rusty scrap of metal, the most worthless item in her pack, and selected it for appraisal. Zeta extended its wing with a beckoning gesture. The metal piece floated up before it. After studying it for a moment, a low, raspy voice spoke. Initial appraisal, 10 silver coins. Yancy's eyebrows shot up. That wasn't cheap for a beginner. A loaf of bread only cost 5 silver. Still, she paid up. 10 silver coins vanished. Zeta swept its wing over the scrap, and a faint light flickered. Obtained worn steel armor piece, C-rank item. Effect, when equipped by a Steel-type Pokémon, increases physical defense and special defense, minor boost. Special effect, when equipped by a Steel/Fire dual-type Pokémon, additionally increases Fire-type move power, minor boost. Yancy stared at the appraisal results, stunned. Steel-type Pokémon? Steel and Fire dual-type? What the hell was any of this? Her current team Larvesta, Squirtle, and the Dragonair chilling at home, none of them were even remotely Steel-type. Let alone Steel/Fire. She'd never even heard of that combination. So basically this thing was just useless junk now? She'd blown 10 silver for nothing. Ha, got scammed on the appraisal. Steel and Fire? Does that even exist? Streamer just threw away 10 silver. The RNG gods are cruel. The chat erupted. Yancy couldn't help feeling disappointed. Zeta seemed to read her mood. Its low voice spoke again. If the appraised items don't suit your needs, visit the blacksmith's forge to the left of the guild entrance. You can smelt and break down items to recover materials, or upgrade and enhance equipment. You could also try selling at the marketplace. Blacksmith's forge? Upgrades? Selling? Yancy perked up immediately. After thanking Zatu, she headed straight for the guild's main entrance with Squirtle in tow. The moment they stepped outside, rhythmic, heavy hammering echoed from the left. A workshop even larger than the guild's main hall came into view. Flames roared at its entrance and waves of heat washed over them. A massive Charizard covered in crimson scales stood with its back to them. It wielded an enormous forging hammer nearly as tall as its body, bringing it down hard onto red-hot metal on an anvil. Each strike sent sparks flying and produced thunderous clangs. Its thick tail slammed against the ground for balance. Powerful back muscles rippled in the firelight, radiating raw strength and the focused intensity of a master craftsman. The air was thick with the smell of iron and smoke. Holy shit! A blacksmith Charizard! Look at those muscles! That power! Badass! The detail on this model! Marry me! Charizard seemed to finish this round of forging. It gripped the glowing metal with tongs and plunged it into a massive water barrel beside it. A geyser of white steam exploded upward. Only then did it turn around, fixing sharp golden eyes on Larvesta and Squirtle at the entrance. It exhaled 2 bursts of scorching, spark-flecked breath through its nostrils. Its voice was deep and gravelly, with a metallic rasp. What can I do for you, little ones? Shopping for gear or need repairs? Yancy quickly had Larvesta display the worn steel armor piece she'd just appraised. Charizard extended one claw scarred and covered in thick scales and pinched the small piece of metal. It brought the piece close to examine, then flicked it with one finger, producing a dull ting. It snorted. Just a little C-rank trinket. The steel's decent quality, but it's ancient. The energy's almost drained. It casually tossed the piece back to Yancy. What do you want to do with it? Smelt it down? That's a 20 silver processing fee. You'll get some hardened steel and trace amounts of residual fire embers. Want to upgrade it? 1 gold base fee, plus you'll need 1 hardened steel and 1 scorching core as materials. If you're lucky, it might upgrade to B rank. It paused, then added. I don't sell materials here. You'll have to find or buy them yourself. Yancy glanced at her measly 15 silver remaining in her empty materials inventory. She understood immediately. The blacksmith's forge was way beyond her budget right now. She couldn't afford either smelting or upgrading. Welp. Sorry for bothering you. Streamer, excuse me, I'm too poor for this. 1 gold coin. The streamer's entire net worth isn't even close to 1 gold, right? Those materials all sound super high level. She glumly had Larvesta tuck the metal piece away and thanked Charizard. With no money for upgrades, her only option was the market. Maybe she could sell this thing there. Yancy clicked the interaction button. Squirtle, which way to the market? Squirtle pointed down a relatively busy path to the right of the guild entrance. That way. Just follow it. You'll see the stalls. They headed down the path. Soon enough, the sound of vendors hawking their wares reached their ears. Simple stalls lined both sides of the road with various Pokémon manning them or haggling with customers. Berry vendors and herb sellers lined the path alongside stalls selling weird minerals and second-hand equipment. Yancy walked along scanning the stalls, looking for one that bought items. Just as she neared what looked like the market's center, one small stall by the roadside unexpectedly caught her eye. The stall was incredibly unassuming. It didn't even have a proper cloth covering, just items casually placed on a smoothed stone slab. The vendor was a cloaked Pokémon, entirely unidentifiable. At the moment it seemed to be lounging lazily, apparently not too concerned about making sales. There wasn't much on display. A few colorful stones, some herbs. But one item made Yancey's Larvesta stop in its tracks. It was a clear glass bottle sealed with a wooden cork. Inside, a fist-sized flame burned quietly. The flame was pure, brilliant orange-red, without a trace of smoke. It flickered steadily, casting a warm but not blinding glow. It looked out of place with its surroundings, like a piece of captured sunlight sealed in glass. Next to the bottle sat a crude wooden sign with 4 crooked characters carved into it, "Mysterious Flame." Yancey stared. That fire definitely wasn't ordinary. But this description, this sign. Why did it give off such a sketchy vibe? She immediately guided Larvesta toward the inconspicuous stall for a closer look at the bottled flame. She also noticed the vendor, or rather, the dark grey cloak draped over the stone behind the stall was even weirder. The cloak was deep grey with sleeves and hem hanging limp and motionless. It looked empty inside. Chat exploded with question marks. Where's the vendor? Nobody there. That model's creepy as hell, like a ghost stall. Ghost-type Pokémon maybe. What kind of nightmare fuel is this game cooking up now? Yancey tried speaking, her voice coming through Larvesta. Hey, how much for this flame? A voice answered, ghostly with a hint of playful mischief. Gold coins? Boring. Trade me something interesting instead. As the words faded, an empty sleeve barely moved. Just the slightest gesture toward the space beside the stall, like brushing away dust. Chat went wild. Doesn't want money, wants things? What kind of vendor is this? Interesting stuff? How do you even judge that? Totally random. Streamer, dump out all your junk. Interesting things? Yancey looked at the 13 question marks in her inventory, and it clicked. Wasn't this the perfect source of interesting stuff? After all, the unknown was the most interesting thing of all. Besides, these unappraised items were basically trash to her anyway. What if she got lucky? She didn't hesitate. She immediately had Larvesta start pulling out those dusty, weird-looking unappraised items from her pack one by one, displaying each before the bizarre cloaked figure. A gnarled root thing, a broken bone club, a colorful shell, a cloudy glass marble, a creaky old iron box, and the most unremarkable-looking one, a dusty pebble. The cloak showed zero reaction to most items. Not even the shadow inside the hood shifted. Yancey just felt an invisible gaze sweep over them before they were dismissed entirely. She started getting nervous. Did this vendor think all her stuff was worthless? But when Larvesta's little claws held up that dusty pebble for inspection, the ghostly voice seemed to show a flicker of interest, with slight amusement. Oh? This beat-up rock's been hiding something. It's got some age to it. Don't you want to know what treasure's inside? Yancey's spirits soared. There was a shot. She quickly had Larvesta nod. The voice came lazily. Appraisal fee. I'll just take that broken iron box from your bag. Looks pretty amusing. A broken iron box for 1 appraisal? And the vendor actively asked for it. Holy crap, this seemed like guaranteed profit no matter how you sliced it, right? Afraid the vendor might change their mind, Yancey immediately agreed. She watched as one empty sleeve of the dark grey cloak elegantly lifted. A faint shimmer swept from it, brushing lightly over the dusty pebble. Crack, crackle. Fine splitting sounds rang out as the stone's outer layer began flaking away. Dust scattered in the faint light, revealing what lay within a pigeon egg-sized, warm, translucent golden amber. Preserved inside the amber was a deep green leaf with perfectly visible veins. It emanated a verdant glow and an ancient life force you could practically feel through the screen. The system notification popped up instantly. Obtained ancient leaf vein amber, B-rank material. Description: a rare amber sealed with pure ancient life force, an essential core catalyst for reviving specific grass/rock type fossil Pokémon. Extremely valuable. B-rank. Core material. Fossil Pokémon revival. Yancey's eyes went wide, her breath catching. She traded that broken iron box for this. Her luck was insane. The scare from the altar passage earlier and the frustration of appraising useless steel armor melted away instantly. Chat lost it. Holy shit. B-rank. God tier pull. Iron box for ember. I call BS unless you mail me the ember to verify. Fossil revival? Why does that ring a bell? Game, surprised? Didn't see that coming. The massive windfall sent Yancy's confidence through the roof. She still had a whole bunch of unappraised question marks in her bag. Strike while the iron's hot. She immediately started to pull out all the remaining items to have this mysterious vendor appraise them. But that ghostly voice seemed to read her mind, cutting her off with a lazy chuckle. Don't get greedy, little one. The rest of that stuff, go find an appraisal stall and mess around yourself. The instant the words finished, the dark grey cloak vanished along with the stone beneath it. Everything on the stall disappeared except that bottle of flame, gone as if erased from existence. Only the smoothed stone slab and the quietly burning flame remained, proof that it hadn't all been a hallucination. Yancy's larvesta stood frozen with one claw still raised, staring blankly at the empty space. Just, gone like that? Talk about unpredictable. She looked at the 12 remaining question marks in her bag, then at the bottle of mysterious flame, then at her pitiful 15 silver coins left. Whatever. Time to gamble. Chapter 238. The special outcome of appraisal, the mysterious stall owner's identity. She remembered the market area Zaytu had mentioned, grabbed the equally confused Squirtle beside her, and started searching the noisy market for a cheaper appraisal stall. Before long, she spotted a rundown little stall tucked away in a corner. The owner was a Sadaudo wearing reading glasses, moving at a leisurely pace. A crooked wooden sign stood beside the stall, appraisal, 5 silver coins/item. That price seemed pretty cheap, right? Yancy's spirits lifted, and she immediately pulled Squirtle over. The cloaked stall owner also appeared right beside her, just watching in silence, as if enjoying a show. And so, a journey of absolute disaster officially began. Yancy gritted her teeth and first picked what looked most like a mushroom to hand over. Sadaudo slowly took it, squinting through its reading glasses as it examined it for a long time, brushing over it with branch-like hands as the mushroom flashed with a faint light. System notification, obtained paralysis spore mushroom, D-rank item. Effect, high probability of entering paralysis state after consumption. Value, almost 0, who would want to eat this? Yancy stared at the mushroom in her hand with its weird color, still faintly trembling, her face going pale. 5 silver coins for a poisonous mushroom. The chat immediately flooded with ruthless mockery. Ha ha ha, poison mushroom. Streamer, try it. It's delicious. 5 silver coins down the drain, lol. The cloaked figure beside her covered where their mouth would be, letting out a muffled snicker. Yancy refused to accept defeat and handed over the broken bone club. Sadaudo began its leisurely appraisal again. System notification, obtained decayed bone fragment, D-rank item. Effect, ground-type Pokémon carrying this will have slightly increased attack power, extremely fragile, dot. Value, 5 silver coins. Looking at the notification, Yancy's eye twitched. Attack boost? Sounds, not terrible. But what was with this extremely fragile description? And she didn't even have a ground type on her team. 5 silver coins, barely breaking even? But somehow, something felt wrong. Didn't this mean the item was basically useless? For the third one, she chose a colorful shell. The appraisal began, faint light flashing. System notification, obtained faded colored shell, D-rank item. Effect, water-type Pokémon carrying this will have slightly increased special defense, fragile, dot. Value, 6 silver coins. Yancy froze. Wait. Fragile again? At least it was a water-type item. Squirtle could use it, but with this tiny improvement and the fragile property, 6 silver coins value. Yeah, enough said. Yancy touched her forehead, feeling her face flush red. Out of the 20 silver coins, 15 had been spent, traded for a poison mushroom, a nearly crumbling bone, and a shell ready to shatter. Only 5 coins remained in her pouch. The words absolute disaster didn't even begin to cover it. Looking at the remaining 6 silver coins in her pouch and the last few unappraised items, her heart sank. Her gaze swept across and finally stopped on what looked like the cheapest, murkiest glass bead. Honestly, this thing looked worthless. But what if? What if it was another piece of amber? With that thought, she gritted her teeth and handed the murky glass bead to Sadaudo. The last of her silver coins was deducted. Sadaudo remained unhurried, the murky glass bead looking completely dull in its hands. Faint light flashed. System notification, obtained dim glass bead, E-rank trash. Description, a cheap glass bead with murky interior, no shine, found everywhere. Except for taking up backpack space, it's completely useless. Value, 0. E-rank. Trash. Value 0. Yancy turned to stone. She felt blood rush to her head, her vision darkening. 15 silver coins. The 15 silver coins she'd earned through hard dungeon runs. Just like that, turned into a pile of junk and outright garbage. Well, strictly speaking, it was all garbage. After that round of appraisals, her backpack now contained a poison mushroom, a broken bone, a brittle shell, and a worthless piece of glass. The chat had gone wild with laughter. Ha 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 ha, cursed luck. 15 silver to 6 silver, the loss of all losses. Entertainment value maxed out. Kairos gets it. Streamer's face is black as coal. Glass bead, surprise? Your boy's genuine trash. Yancy numbly controlled Larvista to pick up the pile of junk from the ground and stuff it back in her backpack. She felt absolutely awful. Right now I just want to find a corner to crouch in and sulk. Squirtle looked at her with concern, seemingly at a loss for words. The cloak floating behind her was already laughing and spinning in the air. Just as Yancy was drowning in despair, about to close the game to cool off, her gaze unconsciously swept across her backpack grid, crammed full with various junk. In the corner, there was something equally drab and unremarkable, even forgotten by her, squeezed among a pile of question marks. It was a dirty-looking linen pouch tied with rough hemp rope. When had she picked this up? It seemed to have been randomly found in some grass in the F1 area. Because it was so unremarkable, she'd even missed showing it to the mysterious stall owner earlier when displaying her unappraised items. Yancy numbly controlled Larvista to select and pull this grimy cloth bag from under the pile of junk, handing it to Sadaudo, who was about to close up shop. She was too drained to even look at what mocking comments the chat was spamming now. Sadaudo took the dirty cloth bag, and the eyes behind the reading glasses seemed to flash with a glimmer of surprise, different from before. It slowly untied the hemp rope at the bag's opening, and a deep blue faint light immediately emerged from the gap. Sadaudo used its branch-like fingers to extremely carefully reach into the bag, extracting a small cluster of silver powder sparkling with countless fine star particles. Oh! A good item. Its movements became more serious than ever, and a more complex runic light than in previous appraisals enveloped that cluster of powder in the cloth bag. The system notification box popped up. This time the border was no longer ordinary white or blue, but brilliant gold. Obtained Stardust Embers, A-rank material. Obtained Space Fiber Bag, B-rank container. Stardust Embers, A-rank material. Description, the legendary essence remaining after stars fall, containing incredible cosmic power. It is a supreme treasure for forging top-tier space equipment, enhancing the power of psychic/fairy-type legendary Pokémon, or performing certain ancient rituals. Value, currently immeasurable. Space Fiber Bag, B-rank container. Description, a magical bag woven from special space fibers. The interior space is far larger than the exterior volume, current capacity, 10 slots. Value, extremely high. A-rank. Immeasurable. Yancy's brain buzzed. On screen, Larvista held the unremarkable cloth bag and the sparkling stardust inside, the entire bug frozen in shock. A second ago she'd been wallowing in a trash heap, and now she'd just pulled something this good? The chat went dead silent for a second, then began scrolling like crazy. A-rank material. Holy crap! Stardust Embers. Space Bag. Streamer, are you cheating? Kairos. Is this drop rate even legal? Everyone who laughed at the streamer earlier, come out and take your beating HH. Next the streamer will demonstrate how to turn 5 coins into 1 million. At that moment, even the cloak floating behind stopped laughing, the figure hovering in the void, staring at the bag of sparkling stardust, clearly very interested in this item. Yancy controlled Larvista on screen, a smile creeping across her face. Who just said I went bankrupt? Now that she'd appraised these 2 items, she'd not only broken even but made a massive profit. But the question was, how much were these 2 items actually worth? Why couldn't she see their value now? And just then, the mysterious cloaked stall owner who'd been floating beside her watching the show suddenly moved. It was no longer hovering in midair but floated directly in front of Larvista. A hand covered by the worn cloak, seemingly made of rough tree branches, extended out, pointing directly at the stardust embers Yancy was holding. Along with it came a system notification. The mysterious stall owner has sent you a trade request. A voice sounded, carrying some surprise, the tone rising slightly at the end, showing hints of amusement. Oh my, I didn't expect your luck to be quite good. It seems I misjudged earlier. Wait, I don't think you even took this item out before. Under the cloak, two gazes seemingly filled with amusement swept across the bag of sparkling stardust, then paused on the brand new space fiber bag. In that case, I won't lowball you. It used that branch-like hand to lightly pat the Birang space bag. This bag is also a good item. Keep it. Then, another hand extended from under the cloak's shadow. In its palm was, remarkably, the jar of flames that had been on the stall. Yancy's eyes immediately lit up. Here, give me that bit of stardust, and I'll trade you this. How about it? Didn't you want it pretty badly earlier? I think what you've got here is interesting. Trade with me, sound good. Hearing this, Yancy thought briefly. What she'd just appraised was an A-rank material, supposedly immeasurably valuable, but this jar of special flames seemed to be something even Larvista's instincts recognized as good. If she traded like this, would she be getting a good deal or getting ripped off? She glanced at the chat to see everyone's opinions. The chat had already exploded. Just trade, it's all free stuff anyway. Streamer, accept quickly. When we saw that fire earlier, the screen had a notification, it's gotta be even better. I think maybe don't trade, this thing doesn't even show a price, probably worth more than that fire. Chat opinions were split, but more people were telling Yancy to trade. Yancy thought about it and quickly made her decision. Stardust Embers was good, but as a newbie who'd just left the starter village, she didn't even know what this thing was for, much less how to use it. This jar of flames was different. It was something she'd genuinely wanted, and the other party seemed to mean no harm. They'd only observed before, and now they were offering these terms on their own, even letting her keep the space bag. Most importantly, those flames were clearly attracting Larvista. It had to be something perfectly suited for her. Okay, deal. Yancy barely hesitated and controlled Larvista to make the choice. Larvista carefully followed the prompts and chose to hand over the space bag containing the stardust embers. The mysterious stall owner swiftly took the small bag, extracted the stardust directly, then returned the bag to Yancy. At the same time, the jar of orange mysterious flames was lifted by a gentle force, floating lightly toward Yancy and landing in front of her. The cloaked figure who'd obtained the stardust embers seemed very pleased. Yancy even faintly heard an extremely soft, somewhat cheerful laugh from under the cloak. The worn cloak even seemed to tremble from this delight. Its gaze fell on Squirtle, casually sweeping across Squirtle, who'd been standing beside Larvista, watching its companion with worried little eyes. The figure under the cloak seemed to pause, as if seeing something interesting again. Then, very casually, it beckoned toward Squirtle. An extremely thin, almost completely transparent pale purple mist, as if pulled by an invisible force, was suddenly extracted from Squirtle's body. That mist carried a faint trace of cold, coiling around the mysterious stall owner's branch-like fingertips. Immediately, the stall owner's fingertips lit up with a pale golden glow, and that wisp of pale purple mist, like ice melting under sunlight, instantly dissolved and vanished without a trace. Squirtle's whole body shuddered violently, and the previously barely noticeable weariness in its eyes instantly cleared. What just happened to me? I feel so much better now. Yancy watched this scene and immediately understood. That mist was. She immediately thought of the strange purple mist that had filled the air when the altar appeared in the passage they'd accidentally opened in the silk thread forest. Squirtle had felt a bit off at the time. She'd thought the matter had passed, but there'd been a lingering effect. Had this kind of mist been hidden in Squirtle's body all along? No wonder she'd felt Squirtle seemed off since arriving at the guild. At that moment, fear surged through Yancy. If Squirtle hadn't gotten this problem fixed, what if it had been infected by the mist later and become like those Pokémon in the dungeon? Wouldn't that have been terrible? Alright, it's fine now. Just some residual miasma. The voice under the cloak sounded again, but wasn't as cheerful. Remember, that place deep in the silk thread forest. It shook its head, the wide cloak swaying gently along with it. Isn't suitable for you to go to. Next time. It paused and added, don't go wandering in there again picking up trash. There's nothing you want there. Picking up trash? Yancy froze, but suddenly realized the other party was actually right, and she couldn't argue with it. She'd been looking here and there in the forest, picking up whatever spawned on the ground. That really was picking up trash. Wait, that's not the point. Chapter 239 Cynthia's Incredible Partner, Skyrocketing Popularity. Although the phrase picking up trash made Yancy blush a bit. Upon careful thought, what she felt more was lingering fear. She and Squirtle exchanged glances, seeing deep terror in each other's eyes. So that purple mist really could corrode Pokémon. If it weren't for this mysterious stall keeper intervening. Yancy didn't dare think further. She hurriedly controlled Larvesta to bow deeply toward the cloaked figure. Thank you so much. And it was at this moment that Yancy suddenly remembered that regarding this purple mist, this stall keeper seemed to understand it extremely well, even possessing the ability to extract it casually. They clearly knew more about this matter than Squirtle did. Earlier she had been wondering how to inquire about this, and now wasn't the opportunity right here? Yancy immediately wanted to urgently ask more, controlling Larvesta to move closer. May I ask what exactly that purple mist is? How can we? However, before she could finish speaking, the scene before her eyes left her stunned. Because that mysterious cloaked figure, along with the crude stall behind it, became transparent and thin like smoke scattered by a sudden wind. In the last instant before completely disappearing, Yancy seemed to see a corner of that worn cloak flash, then it thoroughly merged into the air, as if it had never appeared. In the noisy market corner, only Larvesta, Squirtle, and Yancy's still wildly beating heart remained. Gone? Just like that? Yancy looked at the now empty corner, still somewhat unable to process what happened. She instinctively looked at her backpack interface. That jar she had just obtained, with its ghostly blue glowing flame icon, was quietly lying in one of the slots. Well, at least this thing proved that everything just now wasn't a hallucination. Wait. A terrifying question suddenly surfaced in Yancy's mind. Although she had indeed obtained this thing through exchange, but this thing, wouldn't this also require appraisal to know its effects? The painful experience of just being scammed out of 15 silver coins by the nonsense tree, appraising a pile of junk and one piece of pure garbage, instantly resurfaced before her eyes. Thinking of the pitiful 6 silver coins remaining in her backpack, and then thinking that if this jar of flames that looked very high grade also needed appraisal, and the appraisal fee might be astronomical. Yancy had just felt that getting this flame was an incredible profit, but now suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable. She sighed slightly and spoke to the livestream viewers. I'm thinking if this thing also requires appraisal to use, then is the streamer done for? As Yancy expected, the comments were instantly flooded with gleeful ha ha ha. Ha ha ha, here it comes. Late stage appraisal PTSD patient. Streamer, go quickly. See if 6 silver coins is enough to touch the appraisal table. Sitting here waiting for the streamer to lose big again. Maximum entertainment value. Prediction, what if after appraisal it turns out to be an E-grade lighter or something? Yancy in front of the screen took a deep breath. Whatever, already bought it. She controlled Larvesta, focusing her mind on that ghostly blue flame icon, and selected to view it. Buzz. A brand new system notification box popped up. This time the border that appeared was still not the previous white or blue, but rather an orange-yellow color. Though not as noble as the previous gold, it was clearly quite extraordinary. Obtained A and grade item Ghost Fire Seed, special item / bound. Effect, passive. First effect, Heat Wave, increases the fire energy intensity of the carrier, greatly enhancing the power of fire-type moves. Note, contains a trace of mysterious flame essence, has strong resistance against cold/corrosive energy, such as miasma. Not fully unlocked, requires reaching level 10. Not fully unlocked, requires reaching level 30. Value, special, cannot be traded. No appraisal needed. And the effects, seem pretty powerful. Fire-type power increased by half, and even has resistance against that mist, that so-called miasma. There are even mysterious effects yet to be unlocked. Boom. The moment the notification box disappeared, the Larvesta on screen suddenly burst with intense light, completely enveloping its body in a sheet of red. Immediately after, 2 system notifications popped up almost simultaneously, occupying the center of the screen. Larvesta leveled up to LV.7. Larvesta leveled up to LV.8. Just by equipping this item, her level jumped 2 levels? Before Yancy could digest this joy, another notification box popped up right after. Larvista learned a new move, Ember. Ember. Yancy's gaze locked firmly on these two words, feeling like she was about to cry. She had been playing this game for almost 2 hours now, and until just now her only move had been string shot. Finally she had an attack move. Although it was just Ember, it was already pretty good, okay? Finally she wouldn't have to just watch from the sidelines during battles. On screen, Larvista also seemed to feel the brand new power surging within, its two antennae atop its head swaying excitedly, appearing somewhat brighter. Squirtle also seemed to sense Yancy's change, eyes widening slightly. This seems like a really powerful fire-type item. Congratulations! You're so lucky! But that cloaked figure just now, what exactly was going on? And what were those things we saw? Squirtle appeared somewhat confused. Yancy didn't answer right away, eagerly opening the detailed description of the Ember move. Fire-type move, Ember. Proficiency, 0. Power, 30. Description, shoots flames at the opponent. Has a small chance of inflicting burn status on the opponent, and perhaps some other uses. Cost, 1 pp. Looking at this move's description, Yancy was already thinking that this game was quite open regarding the effects produced after using moves. It looked like just an ordinary Ember move, but once inside the dungeon it could probably be used in many places, like igniting the surrounding environment or burning something through, etc. Right, there was also that space bag. Only then did she remember that B-grade treasure. She opened the space fiber bag interface, and the spacious 10 slots made her happiness soar again. You have to know this game had limited backpack slots, each time entering a dungeon you could only bring out 12 items, and the character's backpack only had 20 slots. With these extra 10 slots, finally she wouldn't have to agonize over whether to discard other junk when picking something up. She immediately controlled Larvista, stuffing all that pile of trash appraised earlier, the weirdly colored paralyzed spore mushroom, the decayed bone shard that looked ready to fall apart, the faded rainbow shell that seemed like it would crumble at a touch, and that glaring dull glass bead, all into the bottom corner of the space bag. This trash was out of sight, out of mind. Ugh, forget about that weird fake. Let's go. Yancy was feeling great now. This time, she must earn back the lost silver coins with interest. Also, she looked toward the F1 area, a trace of lingering fear in her eyes. As for that strange place, we'd better be careful and not go there for now. Meanwhile, in Cynthia's live stream. The stream's popularity had surged to a new high again, comments cascading down like a waterfall, almost drowning the entire screen. And in the center of the screen, the expression on Cynthia's face could be described as quite complex, as if somewhat speechless yet also somewhat amused. In the dungeon, she controlled her character, that Chikorita who looked purely adorable, carefully avoiding the sharp rocks on the ground. Beside her, her partner followed closely, making the same movements. It was a Totodile. To be precise, a Totodile wearing small black sunglasses. Its walking posture looked quite clumsy, tail dragging behind, occasionally falling behind a few steps because it was looking at the scenery or spacing out, then slowly trotting to catch up. When Chikorita stopped, cautiously observing a suspicious patch of grass ahead, this Totodile seemed to finally remember they were currently in a dungeon, and slowly moved to the edge of the grass, looking around. If I remember correctly. A simple and honest voice sounding like a young boy. Diglett are social creatures, they sense prey through vibrations. We can go around, or... It paused, as if searching its knowledge database, adjusting its sunglasses, stopping for a full 10 seconds before speaking. Or we could create a bigger noise to attract their attention, then pass through quickly. How about we throw a rock over there first? Cynthia watched its slow but methodical manner, her mouth twitching involuntarily. This reaction speed was indeed half a beat slow, but it really knew quite a lot. Good idea, let's create noise then. Cynthia spoke into the microphone, controlling Chikorita to use Vine Whip to roll up a small rock and throw it toward the distant clearing. The rock landed, making a dull sound. The ground ahead indeed transmitted a trace of subtle commotion, several raised earth tracks quickly moving toward the sound source. Quick, go! Cynthia immediately controlled Chikorita to pass through this area, but Totodile was still frozen in place, not quite reacting yet. Cynthia had no choice but to use Vine Whip to directly grab Totodile into the air, forcibly bringing it along, only then avoiding danger. Seeing this scene, the comments were already laughing themselves silly. Ha 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 ha, Sister Cynthia's partner is really interesting. Knowledge reserve 100 points, action power 0 points, exam results fail. At first when I saw him wearing sunglasses, I thought he was trying to look cool. Now it seems he's probably nearsighted from reading too much. Kairos is too good at this. This partner's personality is quite interesting too. Cynthia couldn't help but smile helplessly at the camera. Indeed, not quite the partner type I expected. However, it knows a lot. By the way, your partners, how are they? Comments immediately responded, excitedly chatting about this. Streamer. Everyone's partners have completely different personalities. Mine is a super hot-blooded Pikachu, always charging into its death, bit of a headache honestly. My Magnemite is kind of socially anxious, feels like it talks even less than me. My Trico is purely tsundere, clearly wants to help but has to be stubborn about it. Hey? Seems like there haven't been any duplicate types so far. Watching these comments, Cynthia's movements controlling Chikorita paused slightly. Each player's partner was unique, with completely different personalities and reactions. This had far exceeded the scope of ordinary game NPCs. Although she knew it was the effect of advanced AI, still, it really was like communicating with living, thinking Pokémon and going on adventures with them. The technical capabilities of this game, or rather, the power behind it, once again refreshed her understanding. In that case, rather than calling this a game, it would be better to say this was an entirely new life experience. A life experience as a Pokémon in another world. Just then, the corner of her eye swept to the lower right corner of the screen. In that chat window belonging to Wind, quietly lying there was that message. I need you to appear on camera and promote this game. As for how to attract ordinary people who aren't trainers to play, it depends on what you want to tell them. Looking at this message, then looking at the Totodile on screen wearing sunglasses and slowly catching up, as well as the bizarre and incredibly vivid partners described in the comments, Cynthia took a deep breath. At this moment, she finally understood how she should conduct the promotion going forward. This rescue team was not some trainer's Pokémon battle journey, but rather a brand new, life experience. A kind of marvelous journey where you put down your identity, put down your preconceptions, take on an entirely new form, meet unique companions, and experience a completely different life. This was the most attractive aspect for those ordinary people who day after day toiled for their livelihood. Almost at the same time, discussions related to the game had already exploded online. Wind's new work is invincible, my partner Bulbasaur is like a warm guy, I feel like I'm in love. Help! What do I do if I'm lost in the forest? My partner Charmander only knows how to eat berries, currently have 0 silver coins, edible items have all been eaten. Did you guys watch Yancey's stream? Deputy Captain Pikachu is so cool. Cold but definitely has a story. Saw it, what's up with that Dragonair? The black mist on it is so eerie. Ha ha ha, she started with Larvesta and Squirtle, so poor she can't even afford food. So what exactly are the leaderboard rewards for this game? Really want to know. Various guides, discussion threads, help threads, and plot analysis threads emerged endlessly, popularity rising steadily. Clearly Rescue Team's performance as a game was quite good, because in this game, players seemed to truly transform into Pokémon, struggling to survive and exploring adventures in this world full of unknowns. Just as this wave of enthusiasm was about to reach its peak, a bombshell news like a boulder thrown into a lake stirred up towering waves. Sinnoh champion Cynthia's official channel directly released a brand new video. The title was long. Game recommendation: even if you are not a trainer, you can still meet another version of yourself in Rescue Team of Time. Chapter 240. The video goes viral, unexpected task progress. Cynthia's video was beautifully simple. The entire thing centered on one message: even if you are not a trainer, you can still discover another version of yourself in Mystery Dungeon, Rescue Team of Time. That sentence said it all. This game wasn't about epic battles or deep strategic gameplay, it was about something else entirely. In the video, Cynthia didn't bother explaining game mechanics. Instead, she shared her experience with that slow, sunglasses-wearing but surprisingly wise Totodile, along with all those unique partner stories from the comments section. Her voice was gentle this time, like she was simply telling a story. This isn't a trainer's story, she said at the end, looking directly into the camera. Something different flickered in her usually calm, steady eyes. This is a chance to become a Pokémon and start a brand new life in another world. Put aside everything you are and just experience it. I can't wait to see your playthroughs. Just that one line, paired with the on-screen image of Totodile slowly adjusting its sunglasses while Chikorita dragged it away with Vine Whip in exasperated amusement, was enough to ignite the already blazing discussion. Holy crap! Cynthia's review is incredible. Meeting another version of yourself. I'm tearing up, isn't this literally what I daydream about on my subway commute? Wait, so Wind made this game to let us live a second life. Seeing that goofy Totodile makes me feel better about my partner, who only knows how to eat. The concept just got elevated to another level. Wind is a genius. So what's the actual leaderboard reward? Wind, announce it already. I'm dying here. The game was already popular, but Cynthia's video sent it into the stratosphere. Within minutes, entries related to Mystery Dungeon, Rescue Team of Time and Cynthia's video dominated the top 10 trending topics across every major social platform. Discussion exploded exponentially, and game downloads shot up in an almost vertical line. Countless people flooded Wind Studios' official account, filling the comment section with questions and exclamations. Then, Wind Studios' official account finally posted an update. No complex announcement this time, just a pinned comment that appeared quietly beneath Cynthia's viral video. Given the unique nature of the recommended audience for this Mystery Dungeon, Rescue Team of Time release, final leaderboard rewards will no longer be limited to in-game items. Top players will receive equivalent monetary or physical prizes. Maybe it can help you step off the treadmill for a while and try another possibility in life. Real money and physical rewards. Stepping off the treadmill, another life. The combination of those words created an explosive reaction. The comments erupted in a tsunami of "and," followed by even more frantic discussion. Did I read that right? Wind is giving out actual money. Holy crap, holy crap, holy crap. Real money. Wait, does this mean if you're good enough at the game, you won't have to work? Is Wine seriously encouraging us to quit our jobs and chase our dreams? Don't get carried away up there, but seriously, this reward is way more practical for us than rare items. Nothing more to say. I'm grinding this dungeon into dust. The line between reality and the virtual world blurred with that understated announcement. The game's appeal suddenly gained a layer of tangible, real-world possibility on top of the fantasy adventure experience. For Kairos, the decision was straightforward. Real monetary rewards. For people trapped in offices, repeating exhausting routines day after day, this wasn't just a game anymore. It was like a once-in-a-lifetime chance to change their reality. Meanwhile, in a cramped rental apartment buried in the urban jungle, the air was thick with the smell of old takeout boxes and instant ramen. Light from a computer screen reflected off a young man's face. His expression was tired and numb, with dark circles under his eyes. He looked completely drained. His name was Joe, an ordinary office worker, unremarkably, exhaustingly ordinary. Even in the Pokémon world, overtime was still normal for regular people. With no promotion or raise in sight, his life felt like a wound-up gear, monotonous, repetitive, suffocatingly oppressive. As for dreams about the future, those had disappeared long ago. He'd just finished another round of pointless report revisions. Joe was mechanically scrolling through his phone. The trending topics were all about that game, along with Cynthia's video. He didn't normally play games, he thought they were a waste of time. Or rather, he didn't have any time to spare in the first place. Plus, games were just virtual anyway. Even that whole Emerald thing was just an opportunity for trainers, nothing to do with ordinary working people like him. But the words cash reward caught his eye. Almost like he was possessed, he clicked on Cynthia's video. In the video, Chikorita cautiously exploring, Totodile's slow-paced analysis, and Cynthia's line about meeting another version of yourself, these scenes and words made him freeze. Especially when Cynthia said, "Put aside everything you are and experience it," Joe's fingers tightened around his phone. His eyes drifted to the pinned announcement from Wind Studio in the comments. Monetary or physical rewards. Step off the treadmill. Another possibility in life. He suddenly took a deep breath. Step off the treadmill? Another possibility? He stared at the screen, his eyes dull, but somewhere deep inside, that nearly extinguished spark flickered back to life. An impulse, one even he found unfamiliar, surged through him. Whatever. He had nothing else to do tonight anyway. Tomorrow would just be another repetitive day anyway. Why not try it? Just for a few minutes. What did he have to lose? With that somewhat self-destructive thought, Joe found the icon in his phone's app store. It was a simple badge made of leaves and claw prints, labeled Mystery Dungeon, Rescue Team of Time. Download. Install. The progress bar slowly climbed, and his phone grew warm. Finally, installation is complete. He took a deep breath, like he was about to step into an unknown realm, and tapped the icon. The screen went black. Then, a gentle, vibrant light appeared, not the harsh fluorescent glare of the real world, but something softer, like sunlight filtering through a forest, emanating from the screen. He found it almost unbelievable. How could a phone screen produce light like this? Just then, a melodious, ethereal music began to play. Joe instinctively held his breath. A line of text appeared before his eyes. Welcome. Cerulean City, late at night. The only light in the villa room came from the computer screen's dim glow. Kairos leaned back in his chair, letting out a long breath, his fingertips lightly tapping the last key on the keyboard. On the screen, two folders, Dark Phantom and Emerald, sat quietly. This past week, he'd barely done anything else. On one hand, he'd been working on the second playthrough of Ultimate Emerald, on the other, the first playthrough storyline for Dark Phantom. Originally, he'd hired those people from Dream Factory to lighten his workload, but now it seemed like they could barely keep up with Mystery Dungeon's updates and operations. Sometimes he even had to check in on Mystery Dungeon himself. Thinking about it, Kairos felt a bit regretful. If he'd known, he wouldn't have rushed things. Hadn't he just made more work for himself? But on second thought, his progress updating all 3 games simultaneously had been pretty good lately, so it wasn't a total loss. The first playthrough of Dark Phantom's main story was almost done, and he'd completed a lot of Emerald's second playthrough content. Meanwhile, in the corner of the room, a dark figure floated over, Jengar. He brought his face close to the screen, looked at those folder icons, and rolled his eyes. Obviously, he'd helped Kairos quite a bit this week, and looking at those folders now made him uncomfortable. Beside him, Chandelure floated closer too, its warm flames flickering gently, pushing back the night's chill. Today, Chandelure had actually stayed home instead of wandering around, which was pretty unusual. Kairos reached out. One hand felt Jengar's cool touch, while the other felt Chandelure's gentle warmth. He was pretty satisfied with this life now, making games every day with 2 Pokémon for company. A month ago, he really couldn't have imagined living like this. Right then, he casually opened the system panel, wanting to check how the reaction to Cynthia's video had played out. But when his eyes landed on the task panel, he completely froze. On the task panel, the taskbar that had been displaying S-level task, Traffic Diversion, Top Tier, was now flashing with dazzling golden light. S-level task, Traffic Diversion, Top Tier. Have one of your games attract 1 million non-trainer players, complete. Task Reward, Emotion Points plus 20,000, SS Level Special Pokémon Item Blueprint X1, Special System Advanced Item Chest X1. Complete? 1 million non-trainer players? Kairos blinked, genuinely surprised. This task hadn't been on the panel for long. He'd originally figured it would take at least 2 weeks to build momentum. After all, getting ordinary people interested in Pokémon adventure games takes time. He'd had Cynthia promote it, emphasizing experiencing another kind of life and meeting a unique partner, plus the real cash leaderboard rewards. He'd wanted to specifically appeal to those ordinary people whose edges had been worn smooth by life, but this was way faster than expected. It looked like a champion's influence combined with the lure of cash, in a world lacking entertainment, had an impact far stronger than he'd thought. He clicked to claim the reward. Buzz. The system notification sounded. Congratulations, host, obtained emotion points, 20,000. Obtained SS level special Pokémon item Blueprint X1. Obtained special system advanced item chest X1. Kairos's eyes went straight to the treasure chest emanating mysterious purple light. An advanced item chest. This seemed to be the first time he'd seen one. Wonder what's inside? With a thought, he opened it. The chest lid lifted immediately, and a soft white light flashed. A device appeared before Kairos with a distinctly antique, almost steampunk aesthetic. The machine's body looked like a small furnace, with complex pipes connected to its sides and several crystal panels flickering with faint light. The whole thing gave off a yellowish glow, its surface covered in indecipherable patterns. At the same time, Information appeared before Kairos. Obtained S-level special item, Ancient Revival Furnace, Prototype. Effect, can revive ancient Pokémon fossils, restoring them to living form. Activation requires energy consumption, can be charged with emotion points or specific ores. Additional function, automatically scans and marks ancient Pokémon fossils within a 100 km radius, marking is one time, locations will display on the map. Special note, ancient Pokémon successfully revived by this item provide 500% increased emotion point gains for the host. Revive fossil Pokémon? Kairos was stunned again. If this thing ended up in the scientific community, it would be another bombshell. After all, in this world, fossil research was still extremely preliminary. Back when Cynthia showed Professor Oak that fossils in the game could be revived, his reaction was bigger than anyone's, and they were nowhere near actual revival research. If this machine got out, the entire scientific community would probably experience an earthquake. Magnitude 10. And emotion point gains increased 5-fold? Kairos thought about it. This machine had no immediate use for him. He wasn't an ancient scholar, and he wasn't particularly interested in fossils. But if he looked at the bigger picture, he would give it directly to Professor Oak. Yet, giving this thing to him as a game reward couldn't be more perfect. With Professor Oak using this machine for fossil revival and related research, it would definitely cause massive ripples throughout the scientific community. And that meant an influx of emotion points was practically guaranteed. Just then, he noticed something beside the so-called ancient revival furnace, a palm-sized, grayish stone sitting quietly. This had to be a fossil. It was oval-shaped, with fine patterns covering its surface. And it looked like something that had appeared with the machine. Should he try it? Kairos thought for a moment. The description said the operation was simple, just charge and activate. He picked up the Omenet fossil and placed it on the machine's surface. A prompt immediately lit up before his eyes. Consume 1000 emotion points for revival. Kairos's eyebrows shot up. 1000 points? A bit steep. But for him right now, it seemed manageable. In that case, might as well try it. He took a deep breath and selected Confirm. Chapter 241 The Hatching of Fossil Pokémon, the Final Thread. Kairos activated the machine. The runes on the ancient revival furnace lit up one by one, and the crystal panel at its core began to glow with soft white light, enveloping the fossil. Strange energy rippled through the room. The machine hummed steadily for over 10 seconds. The white light grew brighter and more intense, nearly filling the entire space. Kairos squinted against the glare. Jengar floated higher, curiosity piqued. Even Chandelure's flames flickered, sensing something unusual. Then, in an instant, the light collapsed inward. The fossil had vanished. In its place sat a brand new Pokémon. It had a deep blue, spiral-shaped shell with pale yellow edges. A small head, also deep blue, protruded from the front of the shell, armored with hard plates. Two pairs of black eyes held the wonder of a newborn and a hint of nervousness as it examined this strange world and the person before it. Several short, pale yellow tentacles extended from beneath the shell, swaying gently. This was one of the ancient fossil Pokémon, Omenet. It worked. It actually revived. Kairos stared at the ancient creature, genuinely surprised. When he first saw the fossil, he'd guessed it might revive into something like Liliup. He hadn't expected an Omenet. Still, Omenet wasn't bad. It was considered one of the earliest generation fossil Pokémon with solid battle capabilities. Sure, Omastar was practically non-existent in competitive play, but its real-world performance was actually pretty strong. Watching the fossil Pokémon come to life right before his eyes felt surreal. Getting to use it immediately was way more exciting than just receiving machine blueprints. Omenet looked dazed, its small body pulling back slightly. Kairos smiled gently, trying to project a calm aura. He crouched down and slowly extended his hand, palm up. No Pokeball in sight, and none needed. Just kindness in his eyes. Hello, Omenet. My name is Kairos. Welcome to being alive again. Omenet's two pairs of small black eyes blinked. It seemed to sense that Kairos meant no harm and even carried a comforting presence. After hesitating, it moved slowly and awkwardly toward his palm. A cool sensation spread through his hand as Omenet nuzzled his fingers with its head. Kairos smiled. He carefully supported the bottom of Omenet's shell and gently lifted it up. The little one settled comfortably in his palm, tentacles swaying softly. Jengar drifted over, examining Omenet curiously and making a keek sound. Omenet immediately retreated into its shell. Jengar's expression soured. Do I really look that scary? Kairos just chuckled. Back off a little. You're scaring it. As a newly revived newborn Pokémon, this ancient creature's courage wasn't exactly impressive. But whatever. The kid was still young. Maybe it would grow out of it. For now, he was pretty satisfied. This revival proved the machine worked and gave him a rare ancient Pokémon. These fossil Pokémon had base stats and performance far above ordinary species. He gently set Omenet on the table, letting it adjust to its surroundings. Kairos's attention shifted to the second reward, that SS rank design blueprint. The blueprint floated in the system space, made of pure energy and radiating waves of rainbow-colored light. SS rank items really were different. He focused his mind and selected the blueprint. In the next instant, a massive flood of complex information poured into his mind. The blueprint's name and effects materialized clearly. SS rank item design blueprint, trait editor chip, prototype. Effect description: implanting this chip into a specific device, requires separate manufacturing, allows for limited editing and activation of a Pokémon's hidden abilities and attributes, requires consumption of massive amounts of special materials and energy. Note: can only be used once per Pokémon, cannot be reversed. Core material requirements: partial. Heart of Constancy X1, a legendary gem containing immutable rules, extremely rare. Wedge of Life X1, a world tree core fragment containing massive life energy. Star core fragments X3, energy crystals from extraterrestrial meteorites. Mu gene solution X1 ml, requires safe extraction from Mu. Manufacturing difficulty, SSS rank, extremely high. Trait, attribute editing. Kairos felt his brain short-circuit. He'd always thought this system was overpowered, but he hadn't expected something that would make him say this is too broken to finally appear. How was this different from a cheat code? A Pokémon's ability was one of the core elements of battle. Hidden abilities versus regular abilities could often make or break a Pokémon's viability in competitive play. And now, the chip this blueprint produced could actually edit abilities and even stats? This effect was way too overpowered. This had to be cheating. SS rank really lived up to its reputation. However, when Kairos saw that lengthy list of core materials whose names alone made his head spin plus that SSS rank manufacturing difficulty, he shrugged. Heart of Constancy? Wedge of Life? Star core fragments? And Muse gene solution? Just from the names alone, you could tell not a single one would be easy to obtain. The world tree only existed in legends, and the manufacturing difficulty was marked as extremely high. This thing was completely beyond what he could even think about at his current level. Kairos stared at the gorgeous rainbow-colored light, feeling somewhat helpless. Why did this system always give him things that were ahead of their time? He shook his head and stored the blueprint in the system inventory. His gaze swept over Omenet, who was curiously exploring its new environment on the table, then moved to Jengar and Chandelure floating in the corner. One step at a time. Right now, there were more pressing matters. This week was about to end anyway. The ranking rewards for Emerald, Pitch Black Phantom, and Pokémon Mystery Dungeon, Rescue Team of Time were all ready for release. He still needed to decide what to release this month. While thinking, he casually opened another task panel to check the status. The task of reaching 1 million non-trainer players had been completed ahead of schedule today. That more important main quest should be just about done too, right? Main quest, Legendary Foundation, SS. Quest requirements. 1. Have any game you've created achieve over 10 million paid downloads within a single world. Completed. 2. Unlock and use at least one advanced production module to create a new game, and have that game reach sales of at least 5 million copies. 4.98 million, current. Quest rewards, 10,000 emotion points, World Seed Fragment X1, Random Legendary Production Module X1. The result was honestly a bit surprising. Emerald sales had long satisfied the 10 million requirement, but Pokémon Mystery Dungeon, Rescue Team of Time which had been created using the Terrain Generation module was stuck just over 4.99 million downloads, still about 10,000 copies short of the 5 million threshold. Kairos studied that number. The growth rate was already pretty good, but the comparison made it even more obvious that non-trainer players were truly drawn to the game. The total download count hadn't even reached 5 million, yet the number of non-trainer players had already broken through the 1 million mark. And the non-trainer population in this world was already pretty small to begin with. His gaze lingered on the world seed fragment in the quest rewards, and his thoughts drifted toward that other world. Regarding those issues with the Genesis engine, if this thing had nothing to do with life energy, then the problems on the second world side would probably need other solutions. Kairos felt a headache coming on. He could only hope that this fragment could actually connect to that life energy somehow. Watching the download count statistics continue to climb slowly but steadily, Kairos figured that at the current rate, the 10,000 copy gap would definitely close by tomorrow at the latest. Since that was the case, there was no point staring at it. He closed the task panel and decided to do something else first. Kairos looked around the room, his gaze settling on Chandelure and Jengar floating in the corner. Now that he was already preparing to return to that second world, it was time to assess the strength of his two Pokémon. Jengar's strength was well known to him after all this time together. He'd always been at mid-tier gym leader level. Sure, the guy didn't really like training, but his natural talent was there. Plus, he spent every day sitting in front of the computer helping him process data, so his psychic power had been trained pretty well. It seemed his telekinetic abilities had even improved recently. As for Chandelure, Kairos remembered from the last assessment that it should be hovering around the middle of Quasi-Elite 4 level. But thinking about the situation in that alternate world, especially all those future and paradox Pokémon that also radiated gym leader level energy, Kairos felt that to really handle things there, he'd probably need Elite 4 level strength to be safe. At least his ability to protect himself would be much stronger. Chandelure, come here for a second. Kairos beckoned toward the leisurely floating figure emanating a warm glow. Hearing the call, Chandelure immediately floated over and hovered in front of Kairos, the flames on its body swaying gently. Kairos extended his hand, instinctively reaching to touch the cool edge of its lamp frame while preparing to focus and sense its current energy levels. However, when his fingertips were about to touch those ghostly red flames, an energy fluctuation far more powerful than he remembered radiated freely from Chandelure's body, carrying terrifying pressure and scorching heat. Kairos's hand froze mid-air. He went still for a moment. This energy intensity, something wasn't right. Why was this so much stronger than before? The intensity of this power was, conservatively, at least 7 or 8 times what he'd felt before. And a strength level 7 or 8 times higher than Quasi-Elite 4 had only one explanation: Elite 4 level. He felt genuinely confused. When did this thing get so strong? Hadn't it been running off to play every day recently, barely around? Chandelure seemed to sense Kairos's surprise and confusion. The flames on its body flickered slightly, transmitting a mix of apologetic and somewhat proud emotions. A wave of psychic energy came through, and Kairos understood its explanation. Chandelure hadn't been running off to play at all during this time. Ever since the incident when Jengar had suddenly appeared and nearly extracted Kairos's soul, it was still a lampent. Then it had realized something important. It felt it needed to become stronger to better protect Kairos. After all, if it hadn't been for that rare candy back then, who knows what might have happened to him. And it couldn't just stand by and let something like that happen. So during all those times it had disappeared, it had actually been going to uninhabited areas on the city's outskirts with relatively active energy, quietly training hard, repeatedly pushing against the Elite 4 level barrier. Just 2 days ago, it had finally succeeded, but hadn't had a chance to tell Kairos yet. Understanding the full story, Kairos's earlier surprise melted into pure warmth. A wave of emotion washed over him. He reached out and placed his hand on Chandelure's cool lamp frame, stroking it gently. Having a Pokémon care this deeply about his safety, anyone would be moved, right? Next time you get an idea like this, just tell me directly, okay? Why hide it from me? If you want to get stronger, just say so. Buddy, I've saved up so many emotion points. Can't I just draw a few items for you to use? Where's the need for you to train so hard on your own? The flames on Chandelure's body jumped cheerfully a few times, sending back a got it feeling, still carrying a bit of happiness from being praised. Just then, out of the corner of his eye, Kairos caught sight of Jengar, who was boredly playing with his own shadow nearby. Remembering the guy's earlier "not my problem" expression, he immediately grinned. Look at that! Already at Elite 4 level. Jengar was just floating around when he was suddenly called out like that. He immediately rolled a massive eye in irritation. Yeah, Elite 4. Big deal. That was already 2 days ago. How are you only noticing now? Besides, this one of yours isn't some normal Pokémon, okay? What kind of Pokémon gets stronger this fast? Chapter 242 Reward Summary, Crazy Lottery. Gengar thought for a moment, shrank its neck, and silently swallowed the rest of its complaints. Besides, I've been helping you work every day, and you're still not satisfied. Are you kidding? That thing was already Elite 4 level. If it said that out loud, wouldn't it just get blasted by a fireball? So it didn't dare make a sound. Staring at the ball of ghostly red flames radiating terrifying heat, Gengar decided it would be safer to quietly roll off to the side and play with shadows. Kairos didn't notice any of this. He was deep in thought. A boost in strength was always a good thing. With Chandelure now at Elite 4 level, his confidence in dealing with that other world had shot up immediately. He steadied himself and turned his attention to the emotion points balance on the system panel. The number was impressive, a full 20,000 points. This was the income from the 3 games, Emerald, Dark Phantom, and Rescue Team of Time, over the past week. Of course, it also had a lot to do with the various bonuses he currently had. Kairos did a quick calculation in his head. If these 3 games could be properly rolled out in the other world, given its population size, the weekly emotion point income would definitely increase by a huge margin. Unfortunately, the situation there wasn't suitable for that yet. Even though the newest special coding module allowed him to generate games directly in the other world for each player, completely bypassing Pokémon League oversight, the prerequisite was still the same: first clean up the mess in that world. Only after stabilizing a world on the brink of collapse could he safely and steadily harvest emotion points from its people. As for Rayquaza, Kairos shook his head. No matter how he thought about it, getting an ancient legendary Pokémon to obediently sit down and play games was absurdly difficult. Still, he remembered the ability he had obtained from Cynthia. As his thoughts shifted, a line of colorful text appeared on the system panel. Mythical Resonance, S+. Born from the echo of a soul's relentless pursuit of mythological origins, this ability grants the user a unique talent for communicating with mythical Pokémon, legendary Pokémon and mythical Pokémon. Effect: 1. When communicating with mythical Pokémon, you gain a natural affinity bonus, transcend language barriers, and directly perceive their emotional changes and inner thoughts. 2. Emotion point income obtained from mythical Pokémon is increased by 1000%. 3. You can view the bond scale with specific mythical life forms. Reaching certain bond scale thresholds grants additional rewards. Last time in the other world, he and Rayquaza hadn't even exchanged a glance before it vanished. If he encountered it again, he absolutely had to test this ability. 1000% emotion point bonus. If he could actually get Rayquaza to play, just thinking about it was exciting. From experience, legendary Pokémon already provided massive base emotion points, something Mewtwo had proven clearly. Kairos glanced at the time in the lower right corner of the screen and raised an eyebrow. There was less than half an hour left until the deadline for distributing the ranking rewards for the 3 games. After his previous lottery, the leftover odds and ends in his system inventory were obviously not enough to handle this round. According to his promise, the number of winners in each reward distribution would keep increasing, and this time was no exception. With no other choice, he had to rely on the lottery again. Looking at the 20,000 emotion points, Kairos gritted his teeth and invested 15,000 of them in one go. The lottery wheel spun wildly. Light flashed as countless item icons swept past his consciousness like a torrent. This draw took much longer than before, but it also helped him grasp the general pattern. The item lights were roughly divided into 4 colors: white, blue, purple, and the rarest of all, gold. Gold had the lowest probability. Even after spending 15,000 points, it only appeared twice. But both golden results were genuinely top tier. The first time, as the golden light dispersed, 2 mysterious stones floated in the system space. They radiated strange fluctuations, with what looked like DNA helices flowing inside. Lucarioite and Ampharicite. Last time, he had obtained Garcompet from a mission and later gave it to Cynthia. He hadn't expected megastones to appear in the lottery at all, let alone 2 at once. He wondered if he would ever get his hands on a Gengarite. Kairos glanced at Gengar squatting in the corner, deliberately isolating itself, then looked at Chandelure. Oh right. By the time he crossed over, Pokémon ZA should already have been released, right? A megastone for Chandelure didn't sound bad either. As for the 2 stones he just got, he would find an opportunity to give them to players. Lucario and Ampharos were Pokémon he basically had no chance of encountering for now. Both were extremely rare in Kanto. The item brought by the second Golden Light surprised Kairos even more. Because it was a candy. More precisely, it was a crystal-like candy about the size of a fist. Compared to this, the rare candies he had obtained before were practically toy-sized. As Kairos stared at it, a series of prompts appeared. Rare candy, S rank. Effect: after consumption by a Pokémon, its strength will increase directly by 1 major tier. Effective only for Elite 4 level Pokémon and below. Warning: energy density is extremely high. Consumption must be done with caution. It is strongly recommended to use this in an absolutely safe environment. S rank. Directly increase by 1 major tier. Kairos's gaze immediately locked onto Chandelure floating quietly nearby. Elite 4 level, then 1 major tier higher. What did that even mean? Champion. Since it could only be used on Elite 4 level Pokémon, the most cost-effective use was obvious. Without any hesitation, Kairos took out the fist-sized rare candy. The moment it appeared in the real world, the air in the room seemed to freeze. Invisible pressure spread outward. Gengar yelped internally and dove straight into the shadow in the corner of the wall, leaving only 2 wide eyes peeking out. What the hell did he just pull out? Why does it feel so terrifying? Even Omenet, which had only just revived and was still adjusting, pulled its entire body back into its shell, leaving only trembling tentacles exposed. Chandelure, Kairos called. Chandelure sensed the immense energy contained within the candy and seemed to understand his intent. The flames on its body surged upward, burning brighter with excitement. No words were needed. Kairos handed over the candy. Chandelure used psychic power to carefully lift the oversized candy. Then, without hesitation, the ghostly red flames wrapped around it and swallowed it whole. That was how it ate candy now. Boom! It was as if a miniature sun exploded inside the room. A torrent of violent energy erupted outward, accompanied by scorching heat waves. Loose papers and small objects were blasted away instantly. The walls groaned under the strain. Kairos was forced backward by the heat, nearly slamming into the wall. He barely managed to shield his face with his arm, his eyes stinging from the blinding light. Chandelure was completely enveloped in a dazzling, nearly pure white cocoon of energy. The aura within it kept climbing. The process lasted a little over 10 seconds, each one feeling painfully long. When the piercing white light and the violent heat finally collapsed inward and vanished, the room fell into an eerie silence. Kairos lowered his arm and looked over eagerly. Chandelure floated where it had been before, its shape seemingly unchanged. But the ghostly red flames on its body were now deeper, richer in color, radiating an indescribable sense of authority. The flames no longer simply flickered. Each movement subtly distorted the surrounding light. An invisible, overwhelming presence slowly spread outward, centered on it. This wasn't deliberate pressure, but the natural aura released after a leap in life level. Champion tier. A real champion tier Pokémon. Kairos smiled. Correction. He was now a champion tier trainer. Making games and becoming a champion at the same time. He couldn't help wondering what expression those official champions would make if they heard that. Sure, this champion tier strength came from candy, but so what? The system provided it. That wasn't cheating. This was called efficient resource use. Gengar, having witnessed the entire scene, was completely stunned. Its already large mouth hung open wide enough to fit 2 Pokeballs, eyes bulging. Before, it had thought Chandelure was abnormal. Now it realized the truly abnormal one was Kairos himself. So this was the real cheater all along. Gengar felt its worldview crack for the 3rd time. It silently pulled its head back into the shadows, making up its mind. In this household, it was best to keep its head down and be a well-behaved ghost. Kairos didn't notice Gengar's internal crisis. Chandelure's successful promotion to champion tier was undeniably more good news. For the upcoming trip to the other world, safety was basically guaranteed unless they ran into a divine beast like Rayquaza. After checking on Chandelure's condition, Kairos turned to the rest of the lottery results. Aside from the S-rank rare candy and the Mega Stones, more than a dozen purple draws produced several excellent items: Life Orb, A rank, Choice Scarf, A rank, Flame Orb, B rank, and others. These held items were on a completely different level from the ones native to this world. The effects were incomparable, making them perfect as high-end player rewards. Most of the blue draws produced practical berries, various evolution stone fragments, and TMS such as Psychic, Thunderbolt, and Flamethrower. The white draws yielded piles of common potions, status heals, Pokeballs, and similar basics. Kairos quickly finalized the ranking rewards for Emerald and Dark Phantom. Top-ranked players received high-grade held items like Life Orb and Choice Scarf. Those ranked slightly lower got Flame Orbs, high-quality evolution stone fragments, or specific TMS. Players with strong participation earned berries and basic medicines. Since no one in Dark Phantom had completed the first main storyline yet, the current rewards focused mainly on TMS, special Pokeballs, and berries. The reward distribution for Rescue Team of Time was the simplest. Kairos directly pulled the data and prepared the promised cash or equivalent physical rewards through the system, ready to transfer them to the top-ranked players once distribution time arrived. At the same time, to keep enthusiasm high, he also handed out rare in-game currency and small items like Revive and Tiny Mushroom to all active participants, making sure most players got something. Finally, his eyes landed on the pile of lower-tier items and candies still left in his inventory, then shifted to Jengar sulking in the corner. Lazy as it was, Jengar's psychic talent was undeniable, and helping process data every day counted as real contribution. Now that Chandelure was champion tier, he couldn't exactly shortchange Jengar. Kairos took out 2 intermediate rare candies, 1 basic rare candy, and a spell tag radiating cold ghostly light, then tossed them over. Here. This week's pay. Jengar stared at the floating items, stunned for a moment before delight exploded across its face. Complaints aside, when rewards were right in front of it, it would never say no. Only a fool would turn this down. It grabbed the candies and gulped them down, then carefully stored the spell tag. As the candies took effect, the unstable shadow energy around Jengar solidified noticeably. Its psychic fluctuations strengthened as well, bringing it close to pseudo-elite 4 level. It let out a satisfied burp and grinned at Kairos. It suddenly felt lucky. Following this human really was the best decision of its entire ghostly existence. Even if, at the beginning, it hadn't really had a choice. With the rewards settled, Kairos leaned back in his chair and exhaled. Outside the window, the sky was already starting to lighten. Now all that was left was to wait for the surge of excitement from this third round of rewards. He wondered how many emotion points this wave would bring back. Chapter 243, 244, A Shocking Reward Distribution. The next morning, Pallet Town, Oak Research Lab. Professor Oak rubbed his tired eyes and looked away from the computer screen. Morning light streamed through the windows. A thick notebook sat in front of him. He'd filled it with detailed records, ore locations, fossil sites, and Pokémon habitat data from the game. His computer screen still glowed. Devon Corporation had sent him this high-end machine weeks ago. On screen, his Pokémon Emerald character stood deep in a cave surrounded by unusual rocks. Professor Oak had started this project simply. He wanted to help Cynthia unlock Regirock's altar while learning the game. He thought it would take just a few days. He was wrong. As time passed, he made a discovery. Every special terrain in the game, even ordinary roadsides, contained ore deposits. The variety amazed him. Some ores had never appeared in the real world. Others matched minerals he knew well. As one of the world's top Pokémon researchers, Professor Oak understood what these ores meant. They powered everything: capture devices, machinery, assembly lines, and production technology. The research world desperately needed more ores. Supply couldn't keep up with demand. Experts believed ore shortages had cut scientific progress in half. The League had tried everything. They'd even deployed teams of rock and ground type Pokémon to search for wild ore deposits. But this method was painfully slow. Then Pokémon Emerald changed everything. Professor Oak realized something important. If everything else in the game matched reality, why not the ores? The distribution patterns he found seemed consistent. He could predict where these ores formed and what conditions they needed. The game even labeled each ore's properties. So Professor Oak dove deeper. He recorded ore locations for Cynthia while creating a separate research document. He sent this to Devon Corporation, hoping it might help their real-world mining operations. He knew the game world would differ from reality. But he thought the information might help anyway. He was right. After receiving his first report, Devon Corporation made an immediate discovery. They found 3 new ore types in a Hone region mine, exactly where his notes predicted. Each ore had unique properties. All 3 outperformed the rare minerals currently used in industry. Devon's executives were thrilled. The company president personally sent someone to deliver a gaming computer, the one Professor Oak now used. He wanted more information. Professor Oak picked up his coffee. His assistant had just brought it over. He prepared to continue today's gaming session. The Research Institute's door suddenly burst open. A middle-aged man strode in. His hair was messy. His white lab coat was pristine. A sneer already twisted his face. The assistant took one look and fled. This was Professor Charles. He'd co-founded Pokémon Transfer Technology, the system that let trainers store and move their Pokémon digitally. His research credentials were impressive. His reputation was terrible. Everyone knew him as sharp-tongued, mean-spirited, and arrogant. Professor Charles spotted the game on Oak's screen immediately. His sneer widened. He walked over slowly. His finger tapped rudely on the desk, making light clicking sounds. "Morning, our dear Professor Samuel Oak," Charles's voice was sharp. "Working so early, are we? Tell me, can studying virtual games for children really advance your research?" He emphasized work and research with obvious mockery. "We're both too old for this. We should focus on research that pushes human knowledge forward, not waste time on entertainment products. We're leading figures in science. Don't you find this embarrassing? This game claims to give real-world rewards, but they're useless for actual research. Playing games won't solve our current challenges, like fossil resurrection." Professor Oak frowned. He found Charles incredibly annoying. Unfortunately, the man had earned the right to speak this way. Charles was genuinely skilled at research. But his condescending attitude and constant put-downs made everyone dislike him. If not for Charles's contributions to transfer technology and their shared status as top-league researchers, Oak would have thrown him out. Professor Oak didn't want to argue. He replied tiredly, "Charles, you really haven't changed at all." He moved his mouse to close the game and continue his other work. Then everything changed. The Pokémon Emerald window exploded with brilliant golden light. The glow was so intense it flooded the entire room. It turned Charles's mocking face an eerie yellow. A voice rang out, clear enough for both men to hear. "Congratulations, esteemed player Samuel Oak, you have performed outstandingly in the Pokémon Emerald Rock Cave Explorer Hidden event, earning first place. Special reward has been distributed. You have obtained a special item, Ancient Revival Furnace, Prototype, X1. This item can directly revive fossils. We hope you will use it properly." The golden light poured from the screen. It condensed and shaped itself in the center of the room. Complex pipes appeared. Crystal panels glittered. The furnace had a simple, heavy design. Mysterious patterns covered its metal shell. A device radiating ancient power materialized between Professor Oak and Professor Charles. "Hum." The machine resonated with a low vibration. It settled slowly onto the floor, taking up considerable space. Light flowed through the patterns on its surface. The crystal panel at its core pulsed on and off, like breathing. The entire research institute fell silent, the kind of silence that follows miracles. Charles stood frozen, as if struck by lightning. Professor Oak walked forward. He patted the machine and chuckled. "If you ask me, maybe it really can solve that problem." Meanwhile, the internet had erupted. The third batch of reward distributions dominated trending lists on every major platform. *number Win Studio is distributing real money. *number Mystery Dungeon, Explorers of Time leaderboard winners receive millions. *number Pokémon Emerald mysterious player obtains incredible item. *number Pokémon, Dark Phantom skill book giveaway, everyone gets one. Countless players posted screenshots of their rewards. Top Mystery Dungeon players shared bank statements. Deposits with endless zeros filled the screen. One caption read, "Thank you Wind. My mom is saved." Pokémon Emerald players showed off life orbs. These glowed with dangerous red light. They were at least 3 times larger than commercial versions. The top comments said, "Holy shit. Wearing this, I feel my Sceptile could fight 10 opponents." Pokémon, Dark Phantom players recorded their Pokémon learning new moves. The game had distributed skill books. "Ha ha ha, my Haunter finally doesn't have to only use Lick anymore. Just learn Psychic." Even ordinary players shared their modest rewards. "Got a few revives. Wind didn't forget me. So touched. Does anyone buy these? I probably won't need them much." The entire Pokémon World's player community celebrated. Those who didn't make the rankings or received basic rewards watched enviously. They saw the premium items and cash prizes others had won. Forum and social media activity surged again. Countless people vowed to grind harder. Next time the leaderboard updated, they'd make it on. Across the city, in a cramped rental room that smelled of instant noodles, Joe hadn't slept all night. A week ago, on impulse, he'd downloaded Mystery Dungeon, Explorers of Time. He'd immediately gotten hooked. He'd never imagined playing as a weak Cyndaquil, a small fire-type Pokémon, could be so immersive. Carefully exploring dangerous dungeons, cooperating with the hot-tempered but reliable Charmander partner the game assigned him, it brought intense relief. Only during his daily gaming sessions could he forget. He forgot about reports. He forgot about his bosses screaming. He forgot about the numbness of day after day. In those moments, he was just a Pokémon helping his partner survive adventures. Morning sunlight now shone through the dirty window. Joe's bloodshot eyes were surprisingly bright. He'd just completed a thrilling 3-star dungeon. The settlement reward notification sounded. Then another voice rang out. Congratulations player, your leaderboard reward has been settled. Your final progress ranking is 9. 1 million in prize money has entered your account. 1 million. Joe was completely stunned. After a frozen moment, he frantically unlocked his phone to check his account. When he saw the balance, his throat went dry. 1 million was enough. Enough for him too. His worn-out phone suddenly rang. The screen was covered in scratches. The caller ID showed his boss's name. Disgust surged through him. Joe took a deep breath and answered. Before he could raise the phone, his boss's roar blasted through. The anger was so loud he didn't need speakerphone. Joe! Where the hell are you? Did you finish revising the report I sent you last night? The client is demanding it. Efficiency. Do you understand efficiency? Do you want to keep your job? Get back to the company immediately. I want it on my desk within half an hour. Otherwise your bonus this month. Joe had always earned less than his co-workers. His boss exploited and oppressed him constantly. He did 2 or 3 times the normal workload every day. And for tasks that weren't even his responsibility, the boss still ordered him around. In the past, he could only swallow his anger. But now, Joe looked at the balance on his phone screen. He listened to the endless accusations and threats. Fury he'd accumulated for years broke through every concern. He shouted into the receiver with all his strength, cutting off his boss's tirade. Idiot, shut the hell up. The voice on the other end stopped abruptly, shocked by this sudden rebellion. Joe panted heavily. His chest heaved. He spoke clearly into the receiver, word by word. I quit. The report? Let someone else revise it. I'm not even in finance. You make me fill out reports every day. Did a donkey kick your brain? Bonus? Keep it to buy yourself a coffin. You never give it out at year-end anyway. Go to hell. Relief crashed through him like a wave, washing away years of bitterness. He didn't wait for a response. He pressed the hang-up button and dragged the number to his blacklist. The room returned to quiet. The sunlight seemed brighter. Joe sat in his chair. He looked at the Mystery Dungeon, Explorers of Time icon on his phone screen. Then he looked at the 1 million balance in his account. A tired but brilliant smile appeared on his face. He took a deep breath, expelling shadows that had been suppressed for years. Then he picked up his phone again and tapped the icon, composed of a leaf and claw marks. This time, not to escape reality, but to embrace possibility. The screen darkened. A gentle forest-like light appeared. Ethereal, melodious music played. Welcome back. The familiar greeting appeared on screen. Joe's finger gently pressed Continue Adventure. Chapter 244 What did you say that game was called? After a long silence, the suffocating quiet in the research institute was finally broken. Professor Charles's face had already turned bright red. He suddenly jumped to his feet, pointing at that strange machine still displaying first place, his voice cracking with emotion. Impossible. Reviving fossils with this machine? What kind of sick joke is this? The pride that usually filled his expression had been replaced by something far more complex, shock, disbelief, and a hint of barely concealed panic. He paced back and forth, as if searching desperately for proof that this machine was a fake. Professor Oak ignored his outburst entirely. His attention was completely absorbed by the machine. The flowing light across its metal surface, the core crystal panel flickering on and off like something alive, all of it radiated an undeniable sense of reality and advanced technology. He'd heard for a while now that game players could receive actual rewards from the game, but this was the first time he'd experienced it himself. The feeling was surreal. Joke or not, there's one way to find out. Professor Oak smiled and approached the machine, examining it carefully. There was a distinct groove along its side, shaped exactly like a standard fossil. Next to it was a larger opening resembling a loading port, with several lines of text in a script he'd never seen before flickering beside it. Yet somehow, he understood the meaning perfectly. Target fossil detected, empty. Please insert corresponding activation or materials. Find out? Find out with what? Fossils are precious research materials, not exactly easy to come by. Are you really willing to waste one like this? What if nothing happens? Professor Charles sounded genuinely anxious now. Well, as it happens, I've got a spare. Professor Oak turned and called out toward where his assistant had been hiding ever since Charles stormed in. Ken. From that batch of fossil samples I organized yesterday, bring me the Kabuto fossil with the most stable condition and weakest energy signature. The assistant hesitated but quickly emerged from the nearby storage room with a temperature-controlled case, carefully presenting a palm-sized, gray-brown fossil with clearly defined patterns. Professor, this one, even though its life energy is weak, it's still. He seemed reluctant to let it go. It's fine. This one will work. Professor Oak took it. The fossil felt cold and solid in his hand, the real deal. He glanced at Charles, who was now holding his breath, eyes locked on the fossil. Professor Oak took a deep breath and carefully placed the Kabuto fossil into the groove on the machine's side. Hum. The machine emitted a clearer, deeper hum. The core crystal panel's light began to flow, concentrating on the fossil. Then, above the loading port, several lines of glowing text appeared. Fossil type, Kabuto, rock/water. Required activation ores, hardstone X3, waterstone X1, mysterious amber powder 5 grams. Current material reserve detected, 0%. The material requirements were extensive, 17 types in total, many of which Professor Oak had never heard of. Professor Charles leaned in for a closer look, and his expression immediately relaxed. Ha! I knew it. What a load of nonsense. These ore names are obviously made up to sound legitimate. Hardstone, waterstone, fine, but mysterious amber powder? Where on earth would you even find something like that? Professor Oak said nothing, his brow furrowing slightly. This material list was definitely problematic. He recognized some of the ores, but things like mysterious amber powder he'd only ever seen in the game. Could this machine really require materials that were nearly impossible to obtain in the real world? Just then, he noticed another line of smaller text beside the loading port. User detected to possess related ore items in-game. Would you like to perform energy conversion substitution? In-game ores? In-game ores could actually be used? A thought sparked in Professor Oak's mind. He immediately returned to the computer. The emerald game screen was still paused deep in a rock cave. He quickly navigated his character to open the bag, which was crammed full of various ore items he'd been obsessively collecting: hard stones, soft sand, heat rock, icy rock. There were even several mysterious fragments emitting a strange luster. He tried selecting a hard stone, and in the next moment, it vanished from the screen. A faint beam of light shot from the monitor, connecting directly to the machine's loading port in the real world. The text above the port immediately updated: homologous ore energy detected, hard stone. Quality, excellent. Quantity +1. What the? If his body had allowed it, Professor Charles's jaw would have been on the floor. He was watching with his own eyes as virtual ores from a video game became actual energy to power this machine in reality. Science had officially left the building. Seeing this, Professor Oak didn't hesitate. He immediately began searching through his game inventory. He had dozens of hard stones. He transferred the 3 required. Water stone, he remembered picking one up behind a waterfall. Transferred. Clearly, Professor Oak's time grinding in the game hadn't been wasted. His inventory actually met the machine's requirements. As the final material, mysterious amber powder, was transferred, through the game interface, the text at the machine's loading port instantly changed to materials sufficient. Activation program starting. *HM. Asterisk. The entire revival furnace suddenly shook, the deep hum rising sharply in pitch. Countless beams of brilliant white light, even more intense than when the reward first appeared, burst from the machine's complex piping system, flooding the entire room. Across the machine's surface, countless intricate symbols flowed rapidly. Professor Charles was forced to stumble backward, shielding his eyes with his arm against the sudden burst of intense light and energy. Professor Oak also stepped back half a pace, his heart pounding, but his eyes remained fixed on the center of the light, the fossil. The blinding white light lasted about 10 seconds before receding like a tide, quickly fading away. The deafening hum decreased just as rapidly, finally settling into a steady, rhythmic pulse. Click! With a soft mechanical sound, the groove on the machine's side slowly slid open. No longer a cold stone, in its place was a small, curled-up figure covered in a hard shell. Its shell was dark brown with ancient, weathered markings. Its body rose and fell slightly, as if still adjusting to its surroundings. A living fossil Pokémon. It raised its head in confusion, blinking as the surrounding light and environment seemed to disorient it. It let out a weak cry, "Caw!" Professor Oak's eyes lit up instantly. Witnessing a fossil Pokémon revive before his eyes for a research scholar like him, the significance was beyond words. If he hadn't been afraid of frightening this newly awakened creature, he probably would have already rushed forward to begin his examination. It worked. It actually worked. On the other side, Professor Charles was completely frozen in place, his expression nothing short of spectacular. From shock to bewilderment, his entire worldview crumbling before his eyes. He stood there with his mouth hanging open, staring at the living, slightly moving Kabuto under the laboratory lights, then at the machine still radiating residual heat, then at the emerald game screen on Professor Oak's computer. His brain had clearly crashed. What? You just give out machines that can revive fossils? Just like that? Time passed, second by second. The Kabuto seemed to have adapted somewhat, beginning to carefully explore the inner wall of the temperature-controlled case with its claws, making faint scraping sounds. Ken. Professor Oak's voice was steady, but his excitement was obvious. Quick! Prepare the gentlest nutrient solution, adjust the temperature to a constant 27 degrees, and dim the lights. Move carefully. It just awakened from a fossilized state. It's extremely fragile and needs the most delicate care. Wait until it's fully adapted and mentally stable before we start recording data. Don't rush this. Yes, Professor. Ken was so excited his face was flushed. He'd clearly never witnessed anything like this before and realized he was probably witnessing history in the making. He carefully took the case and tiptoed away. It wasn't until Ken's figure disappeared through the door that Professor Charles seemed to snap out of his trance, suddenly shuddering. He stiffly turned his head to look at Professor Oak. His Adam's apple bobbed with difficulty, his lips trembling. After holding it in for a long moment, he finally managed to squeeze out a sentence. Well, this is different from what I expected. Professor Oak looked at him and said nothing. After a pause, Charles spoke again. Oak, that game you're playing, what did you say it was called again? He hesitated before managing to get out the second part, also, how do I sign up? Professor Oak almost burst out laughing at the sight of him. He forcibly suppressed his amusement and gestured at the computer screen. Didn't you say this wasn't real research? Not worried about it being beneath you anymore. Cut the crap. Give me the website. Professor Charles reacted like someone had stepped on his tail. His face reddened as he hastily pulled out his phone. Professor Oak smiled and shook his head, sending him the official website address. Charles grabbed the address like it was some kind of legendary treasure map and bolted without another word, disappearing in an instant. With the uninvited guest finally gone, the research institute returned to peace. Professor Oak looked at the now quiet ancient revival furnace on the floor, then glanced toward the nursery. His mind was still reeling. But he hadn't forgotten another important matter. He picked up the institute's dedicated communicator and dialed a number. After a few rings, a cool female voice answered. Hello? Professor Oak. It was Cynthia. Cynthia, Professor Oak's voice carried a smile. I hope I'm not interrupting your game time. I've just about finished compiling the information I've been gathering on special rocks, ores, and ruins in the game. I'll send you the data package right away. By the way, I saw news online that you've already beaten Emerald. How was it? Any new discoveries? Did you find the clue you were looking for? The communicator was silent for several seconds before Cynthia's voice came through again, carrying a complex tone. Yes, I beat it. The clue. I got a location. A location. Professor Oak's heart sank. Yes. Cynthia's voice was calm, but the weight of her words was immense. That person's current location is in our world. Professor Oak's grip on the communicator suddenly tightened, the smile on his face vanishing instantly. Of course he knew which person Cynthia had been pursuing. He took a deep breath, his voice becoming unusually serious. Where are you right now? In the airspace off the coast of Hone. Cynthia's voice came through the communicator, accompanied by what sounded like howling wind in the background. Or more specifically, just outside that forbidden zone. The forbidden zone. Professor Oak froze. Cynthia. That place is far too dangerous. You know full well what it cost the League to seal it off back then. The magnetic fields there are chaotic, the weather is extreme, and there's... I know, Professor. Cynthia cut him off, her voice resolute. I've read all the reports and casualty records from that place. More than once. But this is the answer I've been searching for my entire life. The information in that game points directly there. I'm going through. I have to find him. This is my choice. Professor Oak fell silent. He knew Cynthia's personality. Once she made a decision, nothing could change her mind. He could only let out a heavy sigh. You're so stubborn, just promise me you'll be careful. Stay in constant contact. Whatever support you need, tell me directly. I will. Thank you. Cynthia's voice softened slightly. Though I'm going, it won't be right away. After saying this, she seemed to remember something and added, oh, by the way. The game's creator, I contacted him. What? Professor Oak nearly thought he'd misheard. His expression became incredibly dramatic, even more surprised than when Charles saw the Kabuto revive. You contacted him? How did you manage that? What did he say? Since the game's release, the League had been continuously searching for its founder, yet he'd seemed to vanish into thin air. Combined with all the supernatural phenomena appearing, the League had begun to suspect this person didn't even exist. And now Cynthia was telling him there really was such a creator. Through a special friend system in the game. Cynthia explained. When I cleared the Emerald main storyline and became the first person to beat it, the system notified me that I'd earned a special friend slot and could add the creator Wind as a friend once. I tried it, sent a request, and he actually accepted. Friend system? He accepted the request. Professor Oak's mind raced. If he could contact that person. He immediately realized what this could mean for his research. Can you share his contact information or that friend code with me? Chapter 245 The First Miracle. Actually, I tried. Cynthia's voice carried a hint of helplessness, as if she had already anticipated that Professor Oak would make this request. I discovered that in the Friends interface, regarding Wynn's information, aside from that name, everything else, including friend code, any contact methods, even the share button, is all grayed out, completely unable to be viewed or operated. The system seems to have some kind of restriction, only allowing me to have the most basic text communication with him. I also couldn't possibly ask him questions directly like who are you, and I imagine he wouldn't answer either. Professor Oak was also stunned, then suddenly understood. I see. Could it be that because you achieved first clear, you obtained this unique special friend slot qualification? This is exclusive permission he grants to top players. For others, including me, to add him as a friend, we'd probably also have to achieve something like a first clear or similar accomplishment. That's quite interesting. I think so, Cynthia confirmed. This friend slot is more like a form of recognition and reward from him. Professor Oak fell into a brief silence. Becoming a first clear player was indeed no easy feat. But if he could get this mysterious creator's contact information. His mind raced, and soon he had an idea. I understand. Professor Oak's voice suddenly became more cheerful, even carrying a hint of eager anticipation. Cynthia, thank you for telling me all this. I've sent you the data. If you're going to the Forbidden Zone, make sure to discuss it with me first. I might be busy for a while, so I won't be available. If there's any new information, I'll contact you. Not available? Cynthia didn't immediately react. I will. Professor, you should also remember to rest, you're getting on in years." Before Cynthia could finish speaking, she heard from the other end of the communicator that Professor Oak seemed to have put down the device, followed by a familiar electronic sound effect with a somewhat profound quality. It was exactly the startup music from Win Studios games. Cynthia. Well, now she knew what Professor Oak was going to be busy with. The first clear player of Emerald was herself, and the first clear player of Pitch Black Phantom. It might very well become Professor Oak. At the same time, in Cerulean City. In the villa, Kairos was staring at the semi-transparent system panel that only he could see, where the golden task completion notification was slowly fading. Main Quest, Legendary Foundation, SS. Quest Requirements, 1. Have any game you created accumulate over 10 million paid downloads in a single world. Completed. 2. Unlock and use at least one advanced production module to create a new game, with that game reaching sales of at least 5 million copies. Current sales, 5,021,378 copies, completed. Quest rewards being distributed. The next moment, as usual, 3 spheres of light immediately appeared, floating in the air. Along with them came a series of notifications. Obtained, Emotion Points 10,000 points. Obtained, World Seed Fragment X1. Obtained, Random Legendary Production Module X1. So now the most important thing was undoubtedly to verify whether that item called the World Seed had any connection with life energy. Kairos took a deep breath and touched the second sphere of light. The next moment, as the light dissipated, a thumb-sized, emerald green seed quietly floated in the air. Its surface was covered with mysterious golden patterns, emanating a gentle green glow from within. A rich life aura rushed toward him, and Kairos instantly felt an indescribable comfort throughout his entire body. This thing. He raised an eyebrow, and the system interface appeared. SS End Level Item, World Seed. Description: the core origin seed of the World Tree, containing incredible power, but it seems to be only a seed right now, not even counting as the most basic juvenile form. It's hard to imagine what it will become after growing. Effects are as follows. Source of life, slowly restores the holder's life force, greatly enhances perception of life energy. Nature affinity, increases affinity and communication with natural life, grass, fairy, some ground-type Pokémon, etc., with further enhanced effects in natural environments. Space stabilization, carrier gains weak resistance to spatial ability interference. Growth, can absorb specific high-grade energy or meet conditions for activation and cultivation, unlocking deeper power. Status description, the concrete crystallization of life cycles and natural balance, containing immense source power of life, currently in deep slumber. Holy crap! Kairos was momentarily stunned. Actually, after seeing this item's name earlier, he had considered this possibility, but what he hadn't expected was that this thing was actually a seed from the World Tree. The World Tree wasn't a simple thing in the Pokémon worldview. Not only was it connected to Mew, but it also seemed to be the source maintaining the vitality of an entire region. At least that's what he had seen in the theatrical version. This task reward actually gave him something with such a huge background? And the even better news was that this thing was indeed related to life energy. This was a seed from the freaking World Tree. How could it not be related? With this, the key problem on the Genesis engine's side was also solved. Holding this seed, Kairos couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and directly stored it in the system space. Solving that problem was one aspect, but on another level, this item itself seemed to have quite a high status. He had an intuition that the effects this seed could currently provide were only the most basic. If he could plant and grow it into a world tree, the scene would be so magnificent that Kairos didn't dare to imagine it. However, even thinking with his gut, he knew that cultivating this seed into the legendary world tree would be very difficult and would definitely require meeting many conditions. It wasn't something that could be done by just planting it casually. So for now, let's look at the other reward. He turned his attention to the third sphere of light. A random legendary production module. The highest grade module he had obtained before was only a special advanced module, and this was truly the first time encountering the legendary grade concept. At the time, he had been completely focused on the world seed matter and had completely overlooked this point. Now that he noticed it, Kairos's breathing involuntarily quickened slightly. The advanced modules given by the system already had such exceptional production effects, so what would a legendary grade be like? He didn't think any further and directly reached out to touch that cluster of light. The next moment, a golden notification suddenly popped up. Randomly extracting legendary module. Random legendary module has been generated. Ding! Congratulations host, you have obtained the legendary module, Resonance Emotion Capturer. Seeing this notification, Kairos couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Resonance Emotion, what was this thing? He continued reading. This module's effects are as follows. Emotion Resonance, strengthens the system's real-time perception and gathering ability of players' collective emotions, and can materialize emotional energy. Can convert the gathered massive, pure collective emotional energy into temporary beneficial effects within the game at specific moments, such as final battle victories and server-wide events, world-level event achievements, successful battles, and simultaneously affect players' Pokémon in reality. Emotion Materialization, based on the dominant collective emotion type, generates spectacular scenes in specific areas within the game, with their scale and duration directly reflecting the intensity of emotions. Can also generate corresponding scenes in real-world areas and provide additional bonuses to real-world players according to specific circumstances. Resonance Emotion Boost, emotion points obtained through mass player resonance emotions increase tenfold. Mythical Resonance, when emotion points collected through resonance emotions reach 100,000 points, this additional function can be unlocked. Please note, this module can only be loaded onto large-scale online multiplayer games. You currently do not have a corresponding type of game and cannot load this module. After reading through this large amount of information in one go, Kairos also had a preliminary understanding of this module's effects. Simply put, this transmission module was entirely aimed at multiplayer games, requiring a large number of players to simultaneously generate a certain emotion to use this module to produce additional effects. As a legendary module, and also his first legendary module, Kairos felt this effect should be considered adequate. After all, it not only provided a tenfold emotion points boost, but also even had the ability to completely affect reality. But thinking carefully, it seemed a bit short of what he had in mind for a so-called legendary module. After all, first, he currently didn't have any multiplayer game types, and second, before actually loading this function description onto a multiplayer game, it was still a bit too abstract and not very specific. Forget it, never mind. Anyway, he would eventually make multiplayer games. The more critical point was the last unlocked effect called Mythical Resonance. This surely had to be related to legendary Pokémon, right? Kairos even had reason to suspect that this last unlocked effect was the key to this entire module. If so, the matter of creating a fourth game should probably be put on the agenda. Just as he was thinking, a new system notification popped up again, with text in an even more dazzling dark gold color. Ding! Main quest has been updated. Main quest, Dominant Giant, SSS. Quest requirements, successfully open and stably connect to a fourth world, and create a game in that world that breaks through 50 million copies in sales. Quest rewards? Determined by quest completion rate, minimum guarantee is 50,000 emotion points, random mythical production module X1, exclusive special world anchor coordinates X1. SSS rank main quest. Kairos couldn't help but raise his eyebrows slightly. This was the highest grade existence among all main quests so far, and this quest's requirements were indeed not low. First was the fourth world. Right now, he had only connected to the second world. He was still short of 2 worlds from the goal. He had to solve the second world's problems first before he could open the third. The fourth would probably follow the same logic. Second, 50 million in sales. Emerald had only sold just over 10 million copies since its release. This required that the fourth or third world must have worlds with particularly large populations. At least judging by the population of the world he was currently in, reaching 50 million sales would be absolutely impossible. Even if every single person played, it wouldn't be enough. The tasks are getting harder and harder, but this reward is acceptable. Kairos shrugged. So, now, let's think about the second world's matters. At this moment, on the other end of the city, Joe, who had just fired his boss and felt like his life had been completely renewed, was comfortably lying on the bed in his rental room, browsing the Pokémon community forum. The homepage was almost entirely flooded with various reward screenshots and exclamations. Suddenly, a post topped to the hot rankings first place, published by the officially verified Oak Research Institute account, entered his view. The post had only one image and a brief line of text. In the image, a small Pokémon with a shell glistening with moist luster was lying in an incubator, curiously examining the camera with compound eyes. Next to it was a corner of a complex machine full of technological flair. The text read: "Thanks to Wynn's miraculous creation. A miraculous moment in scientific research history. First successful fossil revival. Welcome, new friend. The little one's condition is stable and adapting. More detailed information will be announced later." The labeled Pokémon in the image was, number Kabuto, number Ancient Revival, number Emerald Reward. Joe suddenly sat up from the bed, eyes wide open, staring intently at the absolutely impossible to fake, living Kabuto in the image. Holy crap! Revived. Really revived a fossil. He muttered to himself, feeling like his worldview had been impacted like never before. He subconsciously glanced again at the string of zeros in his mobile banking app that had changed his fate, then his gaze fell on the phone screen, on the icon representing Rescue Team of Time, and he recovered. Well, this game could send him a million out of thin air, so reviving a fossil, what was that? Time to continue playing the game. At the same time, in a certain live stream room, Yancy heavily leaned back in her gaming chair, letting out a long ah, her whole person appearing very dejected. She stared at the golden, dazzling yet extremely glaring "Please look forward to subsequent content" notification box that had just popped up on the screen, feeling like her entire person was about to overheat. 1 week. A whole week. Ever since that day when Squirtle brought her into the rescue team, she had dove headfirst into this brand new pit and had never been able to completely climb out since. She had played until she was almost possessed. During the day, opening her eyes meant dungeons, closing her eyes to sleep, her dreams were still dungeons. She had thought that with her veteran player level skills, 1 week would definitely allow her to progress quite a bit. She glanced at the 2 Pokémon in the team column at the screen corner, Larvesta, level 26 now, Squirtle, not evolved, still Squirtle, level 27 now. The levels had been trained up, and quite a few dungeons had been cleared. But this game's depth was simply like a bottomless pit. The volume was really a bit too exaggerated. Just take the rescue team rank for example. Chapter 246 Fellow Sufferers in this world, returning to the second world? According to the in-game explanation, there are a total of 7 rescue team levels, and currently, his team has only reached the second tier silver rank. What's more important is that the degree of randomness in the game's terrain generation is frighteningly high. Each time you enter a dungeon marked with the same name, such as Graveler Mountains or Glimmering Wetlands, the terrain inside, the branching paths, and even the types of wild Pokémon you encounter might all be different. In the same location, what was a dry rocky cave yesterday might turn into a humid environment filled with stalactites and underground rivers today, with a Graveler covered in mossy green rocks crouching in the corner that you've never seen before. Yes, in this game, each Pokémon can sometimes appear as a variant in different terrains, with attributes and moves completely different from the normal version. The chat comments are constantly scrolling. Wind is creating something new again. This map generator must be the most expensive part of the entire game, right? What new pit did the streamer fall into today? As for the quest system, it's even more diverse. Helping lost Pokémon return home, searching for lost precious berries, investigating the cause of abnormal rage among Pokémon in a certain area, and even running errands to deliver letters for seniors in the guild. Not to mention those hidden events that require specific items, specific weather, or even specific times to trigger. The rescue team's badge level rises slowly, and new areas and more powerful dungeons unlock layer by layer, like peeling an onion before her. Yancy played to the point of forgetting to eat and sleep, feeling that time was completely insufficient. She thought that if she pushed hard today, she should at least be able to see some new main storyline content. She controlled Larvesta and Squirtle, exploring with difficulty deep inside a new dungeon for over 3 hours, finally defeating the terrifying giant Ariados guarding the area and obtaining a forest secret key that looked very important. But just as she used the key to open a stone door deep in the forest covered with ancient vines, the screen went black and that damned classic prompt popped up: "Please look forward to future content." Gone. Cut off at the most crucial place again. Ah! Wind. Come out. I promise I won't hit you. Yancy frantically rubbed her hair, wailing into the microphone. I grinned for a week. A whole week. And you show me this. Is cutting it off here something a human would do? What about the rest? What's behind the door? The live stream chat was instantly flooded with hahaha and streamer is mad, mixed with it seems another streamer is also stuck here. Wynn's conspiracy. Forced electronic torture, basically. Yancy, calm down. Calm down. Pat pat, it's not that the updates are slow, it's that you're playing too fast. Go check out Ayano's stream. She just finished this part too. She's probably exploded too. Right, right, right. Ayano must be mad too, go watch the fun. Seeing the chat's reminder, Yancy's eyes lit up. Right. As the saying goes, suffering loves company. She's not the only one, suffering. Regarding Ayano, she had, of course, heard of this streamer before and knew her identity, a gym leader from the Paldea region. However, the two had never had any interaction before. Now it seemed going to check it out wasn't a bad idea. She hurriedly minimized her game window, quickly typed Ayano into the streaming platform's search bar, and clicked in. The screen switched, and what came into view was Ayano's iconic face, currently filled with an expression of life has no meaning. Her twin tails seemed to droop down, and her beautiful eyes were staring deadly at the screen. And on her screen was that exact same, gleaming golden "Please look forward to future content" prompt box. Ayano took a sharp breath, as if wanting to swallow back some inappropriate word, ultimately turning it into an even more frantic scream. Wind! What are you doing? Cliffhanger again? Show me what's behind the door. My Pikachu is still waiting for the antidote. Ah! She grabbed the pillow beside her and pounded it several times, causing her chat to also flood with ha 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 ha. Watching Ayano's appearance, even more agitated than herself, Yancy felt that pent-up frustration dissipate a little and even felt like laughing. She casually opened the gift menu, picked the most eye-catching space rocket, and sent it straight to Ayano. Boom! Ayano's live stream was instantly filled with the gorgeous special effects of a rocket launching, along with a message she typed. Streamer, don't be mad, I'm stuck too ha ha ha. Ayano, who was hugging her pillow in frustration, froze for a moment. Seeing the gift sender's ID was Yancy not Glass, her eyes immediately lit up. Wow! Thank you, Yancy, for the space rocket. You're too generous. She instantly switched to business mode with a brilliant smile. With you, Yancy, you're stuck at the door too, right? This wind is too inhuman. This cliffhanger almost gave me a heart attack. Yancy casually sent a colored chat message, yeah, just defeated Ariados, opened the door, and that's it, I'm numb. Seeing this, Ayano immediately nodded vigorously. Right, right, right. Me too. My Pikachu's Thunderbolt turned that spider into a charcoal grilled version. I got the key and opened the door, bam, progress gone again. I'm so mad. Yancy thought for a moment and directly sent Ayano a friend request on the platform. Ayano accepted almost instantly. Soon, a private chat window popped up in the corner of Yancy's streaming software. Ayano, Yancy. Fellow suffers in this world. Pikachu crying.jpg. Yancy, Seduc facepalm.jpg. Ayano, who's to say otherwise, grinned for a week, feels like I just barely touched the edge of the main storyline, and then it's gone. How's your progress this week? I heard your partner is an injured Pikachu. Is he okay? Ayano, don't even mention it. This guy still looks the same cold and stubborn, but at least his body is temporarily stabilized. The Wigglytuff Guildmaster said it's some old injury to his energy core that's relapsed, and we need to find specific items to help him. The clue seems to be behind this door. But then, Pikachu going crazy.jpg, at this door, the game story is gone again. Now my level is up, Zeraora is 27, Pikachu is 26, but this game has so much content I feel like I've only touched 1/10 of it so far. Yancy, me too. Larvista 26, Squirtle 27, this game's content volume is too ridiculous. Dungeons are like blind boxes, different every time you enter. Quests are many and varied, can't stop at all. But, it is really fun, don't feel tired at all, ha ha ha. Ayano, right, right, right. Addicted. Too addicting. Just this cliffhanger is too painful. By the way, Yancy, do you think we'll add multiplayer functionality to this game in the future? Yancy, multiplayer. Ayano, yeah. Look, what we're playing now is single player, bringing our partner to adventure in dungeons. If there was multiplayer, couldn't our two teams explore dungeons together? Yancy, thinking.jpg, that makes sense. We could support each other, and call for help when encountering dungeons we can't beat. But Win seems to have said it's currently single player. Their technology can definitely implement it, but I don't know if they'll release it. Iono, dreams are still necessary. If there really is multiplayer, Yancy, let's form a fixed team. We'll absolutely sweep through all the high difficulty quests of Wigglytuff's guild. While Yancy and Iono, these two victims, were complaining about wind across screens and fantasizing about a multiplayer future, the atmosphere in another place was equally heated and about to explode. That chat group, originally gathering gym leaders and Elite Four members from various regions, had now had its group name changed by some troublemaker to Pokémon Game Tea Party. And the messages in the group were frantically flooding at a rate of several per second. The discussion content had nothing to do with tactics, all about those three current games: Emerald, Pokémon Mystery Dungeon, and Dark Phantom. I love rocks. Screenshot, magnified image of a peculiar rock in Emerald. Everyone look at this rock. The texture is highly similar to the mural fragments from ancient castle ruins in the Unova region. This game's research details are too amazing. How much more has he hidden? Gorgeous splash, Steven, you're at it again. Melodic helpless.jpg, but speaking of details, that Pokemon dancing in the morning mist in Dark Phantom, that elegance and hazy feeling is simply the highest level artistic moment. I've tried to recreate it over 10 times but can't capture that spirit. Alder, Steven, Wallace, one of you does art, one likes rocks, you're both the same. Diantha, I'm actually obsessed with the contest spectacular in Emerald, researching the stage effects of different move combinations. To think this could be a competition, it's really interesting. Speak with fists, HA. I'm playing all three alternately. In Emerald I just pushed to the 6th gym with an all-fighting team. Mystery Dungeon is about to reach silver rank. Dark Phantom I just started a few days ago, progress is a bit lower, currently at the 3rd gym. Lorelei, Bruno, is your liver okay? Sweat.jpg I just played Mystery Dungeon to Wigglytuff's guild, partner is a tail low, feels pretty good. It's just that the dungeon randomness is too great. Yesterday I found good stuff in the same forest dungeon, today I went in again and fell into a pit. Agatha, Ghost Elite 4 this old woman thinks playing slowly like this is quite good. Young people, don't be too impatient. Seductdrinkingtea.jpg. Messages in the group came one after another. These champions and Elite 4 members from various regions all put down their usual identities and airs, like a group of ordinary gamers, enthusiastically exchanging strategies, complaining about game content, and sharing their adventures and discoveries in different game worlds. The originally serious discussion group was now filled with a cheerful atmosphere. Well, actually before the games appeared, it wasn't very serious here either. But after the games appeared, it did indeed become more cheerful. However, whether it was the two streamers going crazy on air or the champions hotly discussing in the group, none of them knew at this moment that the game creator whose true identity they were all curious about was facing the system interface before him, revealing a thoughtful expression. The speed of completing tasks is faster than I expected. If that's the case, then let's depart directly. Given the situation there, delaying one day might mean one more variable. Kairos didn't delay and directly called over Chandelure. In the air, ghostly red flames flickered. Chandelure floated cheerfully to Kairos's side, looking at him somewhat puzzled. You weren't there last time, this time I need you to come with me. As he spoke, he directly took out the dimensional communicator and activated it. The humming sound of activation rang out again, and a ghostly red vortex spun open in the villa room. Kairos took a deep breath and stepped into it with Chandelure. After the familiar dizzying sensation, the familiar touch came from underfoot, carrying the mixed smell of engine oil and dust. Pungent air rushed into his nostrils. Dim light leaked through the gaps in rusted pipes. It seemed this transmission location was still that underground city district where he first arrived. However, this time he wouldn't be lost like before. He directly led Chandelure with practiced ease toward the direction of the watchman's base. Soon, that hidden entrance surrounded by abandoned industrial zones appeared before him. At the base entrance, the heavy metal gate was tightly closed, and two watchman warriors wearing modified simple armor and alert expressions blocked the way. One burly man with a stern face roughly barked, "Halt! Who goes there? State your name. Not just anyone can enter here." Kairos's steps paused. Before he could explain, another slightly younger warrior's eyes suddenly widened. After carefully identifying Kairos's face, his expression instantly changed. "Ren, stop, it's that person. That person from 2 days ago." The man called Ren froze, looked carefully at Kairos, and the alertness and seriousness on his face instantly vanished, replaced by embarrassment and surprise. He quickly made way. You are, that person? I apologize, I wasn't at the base that day. Please forgive me. The gates of the Watchmen are forever open to you. Please enter. The heavy metal gate slowly opened with the roar of hydraulic devices. Kairos didn't say much and walked straight in. Just entering the relatively spacious area inside the base, Kairos saw a familiar figure. Old Smoker was holding his old metal pipe, sitting on an overturned metal barrel talking to a Watchman member about something. When he heard the commotion and looked up, seeing clearly it was Kairos, his whole person suddenly froze. Old Smoker almost choked on his smoke and quickly took down the pipe, eyes wide. It's you, came back so fast. Kairos nodded. Yes, I found a solution. At these words, Old Smoker directly stood up and grabbed Kairos. Quick, come with me. Chapter 247. A brand new plan and decision, a new identity. After passing through the familiar corridor, the smell of motor oil mixed with sweat hit him once again. Kairos stepped back into the core area of the Watchman's base, which had been converted from a massive workshop. The mining lamps overhead still cast their dim halos, illuminating the busy or exhausted figures below. The lingering sense of tension in the air seemed even heavier than when he had left. His gaze swept across the space and quickly locked onto a small figure beside a pile of repair parts. It was Actuan. Kairos walked straight over. The little boy was carefully wiping dust off a device in his arms. Hearing the sound, he suddenly looked up, his eyes instantly lighting up. Kairos. He ran over with his backpack, his face showing obvious relief. You're back. I knew you'd come back. Chandelure floated behind him, glanced at Actuan, then turned toward Kairos with curiosity. After discovering the visitor was someone familiar, it also squinted its eyes contentedly. Yeah, I'm back. Kairos patted Actuan's shoulder. How have things been these past 2 days? Actuan vigorously shook his head. Nothing much happened, just, it's been rumbling outside constantly, and everyone's really tense. His voice lowered. Don't worry, everything will be fine. Kairos patted his shoulder reassuringly. Just then, footsteps approached. Ilera and several high-ranking Watchman members, having heard the news, rushed over directly. Ilera looked more haggard than she had 2 days ago, with dark circles under her eyes and low energy. She quickly walked up to Kairos, appearing very anxious. You're back. Before Kairos could ask anything, she spoke extremely quickly. While you were gone, the base, only because we have Quinn in our custody did the Alliance not dare to actually make a move. But the mechs and aircraft patrolling outside haven't stopped, rumbling day and night. Besides surrounding us, though, they haven't made any other moves, no attacks, no one sent to negotiate. This situation made it even harder to breathe. Everyone in the base had been on edge these past 2 days, constantly on alert, unable to sleep well, afraid that the Alliance would attack them at any moment. Fortunately, Kairos had returned now. She stared intently at Kairos, asking somewhat anxiously. How is it? Did you find a way? I really feel time is running out. Behind her, Old Smoker held his pipe without speaking, but his equally intent gaze at Kairos said everything. Other busy people in the base gradually stopped their work, their gazes silently converging on him. The air seemed to freeze, leaving only the faint sound of dripping water from distant pipes and the slight crackling of Chandelure's flames behind Actuan. Meeting Ilera's gaze, Kairos nodded. A way. I did find one. These words were like a stone thrown into water, instantly creating huge ripples among everyone. Ilera took a sharp breath, her chest rising and falling. Really? What way? What do we need to do? Everyone in the Watchman is ready to coordinate with your actions at any time. Her speech was still very rapid. However, Kairos's next words left Ilera and everyone listening intently completely stunned. There is a way, but I don't need you all right now. I'm going to find the Alliance. Kairos's voice was very calm. What? Ilera froze upon hearing this. The Watchmen behind her were all dumbfounded, suspecting they had heard wrong. Go find the Alliance? The Alliance that was hunting them down like rats and about to launch its destruction plan? Wasn't this jumping into a fire pit? Kairos, you. Ilera opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but didn't know what to say. She couldn't understand what this boy from another world was thinking. Simply put, I think I need a deeper understanding of this matter, understanding the Genesis engine, understanding what the situation inside the Alliance actually is right now. Kairos explained briefly. Don't worry, just wait here for my news. Within 1 day, I should be back. After speaking, he said no more and turned toward the base exit, leaving Ilera and the watchmen standing there stunned, their faces full of confusion. Go find the Alliance? What kind of solution was that? Although Kairos's previous performance had made them realize that this person couldn't be viewed with normal expectations, that even if everyone in the Alliance joined forces, they might not be his match, they still couldn't figure out what exactly Kairos was going to do. Kairos ignored the gazes behind him and walked straight toward the exit corridor. Just as he was about to step onto the ascending stairs, a figure blocked his path. It was Old Smoker. He still held that old metal pipe in his mouth, exhaling smoke. I know what you want to say, Kairos spoke first. Don't worry, I have my own plan. Old Smoker shook his head. I'm not here to persuade you. Or rather, I never thought your plan was wrong. Kairos raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to continue. The Genesis engine probably isn't as simple as it seems. Old Smoker lowered his voice, glancing around to make sure no one could hear, then continued quietly. Truth is, from what I know, the Alliance isn't a unified block internally either. Without that key, the consequences of forcibly starting the engine. I'm afraid it's far more than just causing a few lower districts to collapse. Otherwise, why do you think they're waiting? Why are they going through the trouble of searching the world for that key? If it really didn't matter, they would have pushed the button long ago. They wouldn't care about such a cost. Kairos nodded. In fact, this was precisely why he had temporarily changed his mind. When he came to this world this time, he had thought very simply, relying on Chandelure's Elite 4 level strength that could crush this world, plus the Watchman's combat power enhanced by his rare candies, he could just charge through directly to the Alliance core area and physically shut down that Genesis engine. But thinking carefully, this wouldn't fundamentally solve the problem. The surface world's current condition couldn't allow people to move up and survive directly, and without the Genesis engine, the underground world's energy probably couldn't be maintained for long either. So he had temporarily decided to infiltrate first, figure out the situation, and then make his next plan. Now, new problems had emerged. He was probably already wanted by the Alliance. With Quinn currently in the Watchman's custody and so many deserters having returned to the Alliance side, his appearance had likely been circulated throughout the Alliance. As soon as he appeared in the upper district or the Alliance core area, he would immediately become the most conspicuous target. Forget investigating the Genesis engine, he'd probably have to start fighting as soon as he arrived. However, the good news was, he wasn't a person of this world at all. Change his appearance, change his identity, and to the Alliance, he would just be an ordinary person. Thinking of this, Kairos looked down at the dark grey coveralls he was wearing, clothing he had specifically changed into before crossing over that more closely resembled what this world's lower-level workers commonly wore. This was much more low-key than his previous casual outfit. But just changing clothes definitely wasn't enough, since his face was still the same face. At this moment, he stopped in front of a stall selling various scrap parts and miscellaneous items. His gaze swept over a pile of metal products and quickly locked onto a crudely shaped iron mask that only covered the upper half of the face. The mask's surface was pitted and uneven, looking like a part removed from some scrapped machine. This, how much? Kairos pointed at it. The stall owner was an old man missing a front tooth. He glanced at him and held up 3 fingers. Kairos didn't waste words. He counted out 3 coins from the small amount of currency Dr. Lila had given him earlier, handed them over, picked up the mask, and fastened it on his face. The cold metal pressed against his skin, covering the area above the bridge of his nose, leaving only his chin and lips exposed. This way, the appearance problem was also solved. So now, only one final key problem remained: identity. If he was just wandering around the commercial district, it wouldn't matter, but a reasonable and legal identity was essential for entering the Alliance core areas. When he came to this world last time, Dr. Lila had given him a temporary identity, but that identity definitely couldn't be used anymore. As for the Watchman's side, Kairos shook his head. It was already difficult enough for them to survive in the lower district. If they could forge an identity that could pass the Alliance core area's security checks, they probably would have gone to find the Alliance themselves long ago. Kairos's gaze turned toward the distance. He remembered that when he came to this world the second time, near the edge of this area, there was a semi-abandoned public communication booth. A few minutes later, Kairos entered the communication booth again. Relying on memory, his fingers pressed a string of numbers on the old dial pad, Dr. Lila's private communication code. After a long stretch of static noise, the screen flickered several times, and Dr. Lila's face, showing obvious fatigue and worry, appeared. She seemed to be in a place with a laboratory background. "Who are you?" Dr. Lila was startled at first, seeing the person wearing an iron mask on the screen, then immediately recognized his exposed lower face. "That person?" Her tone was full of surprise and anxiety. "It really is you. Where have you been these past 2 days? No news at all. And what's going on with that game you released? Why did the Alliance suddenly order a complete ban? And list you as the highest level? Let's not talk about that first, Doctor." Kairos directly interrupted her questions, his voice sounding somewhat muffled through the mask. "I can't explain those issues in detail right now. This time I'm only asking you one thing regarding the final purpose of the Genesis engine research, or rather, what the Alliance leadership plans to use it for, do you know?" At these words, Dr. Lila on the other side of the screen froze. The urgency and confusion on her face slowly disappeared, replaced by a complex expression. After several seconds of silence, she finally spoke slowly, her voice much lower. "Truth is, I was only responsible for the design and initial testing of the engine's core stabilization module. But I know what the Alliance leadership wants isn't just something as simple as stabilizing the underground energy supply. I've heard, they want to use it to do something very dangerous." She closed her eyes, as if recalling something. "Specifically what, is beyond my clearance level. I'm just a researcher and don't know these things." "What are you trying to say?" "What I'm saying is, I know what the Alliance is planning to do," Kairos said. "They plan to use it to tear through the ley lines above, extract the ecological energy that the surface world has just begun to recover, to maintain their rule in the underground world. But the cost is that the entire surface world will collapse again, and many lower districts might also collapse and disappear because of this, along with the people inside. Yes, the surface world can actually be inhabited now, but the Alliance deliberately concealed this fact." As these words came out, the massive amount of information directly made Lila's eyes widen. "What? This?" She obviously hadn't expected that the plan behind the Genesis engine would be like this. But as one of the designers of the engine's core modules, she knew better than anyone the terrifying energy contained in the engine. If things were really as Kairos said, it truly could bring about such consequences. But just hearing this, she obviously couldn't believe it yet. Kairos knew this too, so he continued. "Doctor, I've walked all the way from the lower district and seen what the Alliance has done. I've also confirmed this plan through certain channels. If you want, I can show you some evidence." As he spoke, he showed the iron tag that Old Smoker had given him. "Do you recognize this?" Chapter 248 The Abandoned Database, Infiltration Plan? At this moment, Lila's gaze was fixed intently on the black iron badge that Kairos displayed on the screen. She had naturally seen that symbol of interlocking gears and lightning before. If memory served, about a decade ago at a top-secret project initiation meeting, this symbol had appeared on the cover of Chief Science Officer Miles's private terminal files. And she naturally knew quite clearly what identity this symbol represented. Mason Hart. That legendary engineer who, according to legend, had saved Miles's life in the Great Disaster over a decade ago, but who later vanished without a trace. This person was actually from the lower city and still alive? And why would Kairos know him? Countless questions and enormous shock left Lila feeling her mind go completely blank, and what Kairos had just said made it impossible for her to ignore. Tearing apart the ley lines, extracting energy from the entire surface world, causing the lower city to collapse? This sounded far too terrifying. If it really happened. If the Genesis engine she designed truly would lead to such consequences. She didn't dare continue thinking further. She knew very well in her heart just how terrifying the Genesis engine's energy was. A reaction triggered by that level of energy running wild would absolutely cause countless people to instantly vanish from this world. Also, was the surface world truly already habitable now? If this were really the case, wouldn't that mean the Alliance had been deceiving everyone all along? For a moment, Lila truly found it somewhat hard to believe what Kairos was saying, because if what he said was true, then she had become the Alliance's accomplice. As a researcher, she had always possessed a sense of responsibility she took pride in. And this sense of responsibility made it absolutely impossible for her to accept such a thing. In truth, regarding the true purpose of the Genesis engine, she had never thought much about it. The orders from the Alliance's upper echelons had always made her feel she was working hard for the greater good, but now, her fingers clenched and released on the control panel. What should she do now? If what Kairos said was true, should she help Kairos? That would mean betraying the Alliance, betraying the organization she had worked for all these years. Not help? If such a situation truly existed, what about the tens of thousands of lower city residents in that surface world that had already returned to normal but was being covered up by the Alliance? For a moment, Lila fell into tremendous hesitation, appearing quite conflicted. What you're saying, I need some time to process. You can have time, but we don't have much left. Kairos shrugged. You may not believe me now, but I'll show you more concrete evidence next. Right now I just need an identity to facilitate my actions, preferably one that can grant access to areas related to the Genesis engine. I want to investigate some information. Upon hearing this, Lila's internal scales swayed violently before she finally made her decision. No matter what, she couldn't watch the engine she had cultivated with her own hands become a dangerous thing that would destroy the world. She took a deep breath and spoke with difficulty. All right. I can give you the identity of a data cleaner. These people are normally responsible for daily maintenance of databases in the outer areas of the research district, with relatively low clearance. So this identity can only access non-core databases and some abandoned databases. I don't know if that will be enough for you. Her fingers operated rapidly on the keyboard. I'll send the identity information over now. This identity is named Lin, but it won't withstand deep investigation. This identity will only let you operate in the outer areas of the research district. You absolutely cannot go to the core area. Also. She paused, her tone carrying a tense note. Security checks in the research district are very strict, with 3 levels of verification: biological scanning, energy fluctuation detection, and finally identity recognition. Any abnormality in any step will trigger an alarm, so you must be very careful. Kairos nodded in understanding. At this moment, Dr. Lila's information stream had already transmitted to the screen before him, and a card fell directly out of the machine. He glanced at the identity information for someone named Lin and picked up the card. All right, thank you. Wait. Lila hurriedly called out to him, hesitating for a moment. Director Miles has been very mysterious lately, under tremendous pressure. I don't know what he's thinking. If possible, please deliver a message for me. Tell him I want to know what he truly thinks about the Alliance. Having finished speaking, the communication was cut off and the screen went dark. On the other side, in the laboratory, Lila leaned back in her chair, her face pale and body still trembling slightly. This time, had she truly done the right thing? With the identity of Lin, Kairos no longer lingered. He quickly left the lower city and boarded the only channel to the surface world, the public rail train to the city where the Alliance's core district was located. The carriage was packed with weary workers and citizens with numb expressions, the air mixed with the smell of sweat and cheap cleaning agents. The train traveled through darkness, then suddenly climbed upward. When the train burst out of the underground tunnel and entered the Alliance main city area, the intense light made Kairos squint slightly. A massive transparent dome covered the entire city, beams of sunlight filtering through special materials, bright but lacking some of the sun's warmth. Clearly, this was an artificial sun. When he first arrived, he hadn't noticed, but now it was clear to him. Towering metal buildings reflected cold luster, aerial tracks crisscrossed like a spider web, and small aircraft shuttled silently through the air. The streets were clean, pedestrians dressed smartly, wearing smiles on their faces that lower city residents would never have. Kairos also noticed that on the roads, patrolling mecha squads constantly surveyed the streets, blue and white searchlights sweeping every corner. When he first came, there hadn't been such patrolling machines. Clearly the recent events had put the Alliance on alert. Soon, the train arrived at the station. This was the Alliance's core area. After Kairos disembarked, he headed directly according to the route Lila provided, toward the security checkpoint at the outer area of the research district. The checkpoint entrance was a massive alloy gate, with several guards wearing fully armed powered exoskeletons at the door. Kairos wasn't nervous. He simply stepped forward and inserted Lin's identity card into the recognition slot. At the same time, Chandelure had already followed Kairos's instructions to hide in the shadow beneath his feet like Jengar had done before, avoiding detection by the energy scanner. For an Elite 4 level Ghost-type Pokémon, this wasn't particularly difficult. A green scanning beam swept over his body, confirming his biological information. The identity card popped out, displaying, Lin, Data Cleaner, Level 3 Clearance. Level 3 Clearance? Outer Area. A guard glanced at the screen, then looked over Kairos wearing the iron mask with suspicion. Are you new? Yes, just transferred. I'm responsible for the abandoned database. Kairos's voice came through the mask, sounding somewhat muffled. The guard looked carefully at the information on the screen again, confirming there were no errors. Although he found this masked fellow a bit strange, the clearance was valid, and he had no reason to stop him, so he simply didn't bother. Go on in. Since you're new, remember to pay attention to area markings and don't wander around. The heavy alloy door opened. Kairos stepped into the research district. Everything before him was different from both the lower city and the prosperous district outside. White was the main color scheme here. Walls, floors, and ceilings were all very clean, the air filled with the distinctive smell of disinfectant. Researchers in white coats hurried about, conversing in low voices, most wearing anxious or focused expressions on their faces. Honestly, this place gave Kairos an initial feeling somewhat like a hospital. He didn't carefully observe his surroundings but went directly according to his identity clearance to first enter a non-core database area that Lila had mentioned. This place stored large amounts of historical operation logs, equipment maintenance records, and some data content marked as outdated or redundant. There was no one in the room. Kairos made a show of opening a data cleaning terminal, and a light screen popped up. His fingers tapped a few times on the virtual keyboard, selected a batch of useless data, and initiated the deletion program. This world's technological level was indeed quite high. Machines could even directly link with human consciousness. At this moment, massive information fragments flooded into his mind through the terminal, energy consumption records from routine engine maintenance, malfunction reports from certain energy overloads, early data from surface environment monitoring, and the like. During this process, Kairos keenly caught some anomalous points in different logs. He searched for the keyword Genesis engine and then found an early engine test run report that had been archived. The report clearly mentioned that to maintain the current scale of energy supply for the lower city, the engine only needed to output 15% of its designed power, which would be sufficient. However, in the operation test logs from the past year, the engine's average output power had been increased directly to 25%. This power level clearly exceeded the needs for stable energy supply. From this perspective, the Alliance wasn't using this thing to maintain the normal operation of the underground city? Just then, the communicator he had obtained when he first arrived in this world vibrated slightly in his pocket. He picked it up and looked. An encrypted message jumped out, sent by Lila. Lila, go to abandoned database E743, folder in section 18, all documents related to the Genesis engine. Clearance is temporarily open to you for 5 minutes now. Be careful, there's tracking data inside. Delete the access records immediately after viewing. Hurry. Scanning the message, Kairos immediately took action. He quickly went to that abandoned database and, using the temporary clearance Lila had granted, found that folder. Inside were several drafts marked as erroneous. And the signature on the drafts was actually a familiar name. The miles that old Smokestack had mentioned. Document title, Project Genesis Engine High Power Operation Risk Assessment, Draft. Author, Miles Kafka, Chief Science Officer. Date. Classification, Top Secret / Olympus Level Clearance Only / Not Finally Approved. This was the document's header, with a dense mass of content below. Kairos quickly read through it once. To summarize briefly, the information this document mentioned basically stated that if the Genesis engine continued to operate at higher power, not only would it not bring more energy to the lower city, it would instead trigger some dangerous problems. At the end of the document were 2 lines in red text. Document status, archived in E743 Abandoned Database Section 18 folder. Archival reason, theoretical model contains major uncertainties, conclusions overly pessimistic, inconsistent with project's final strategic direction. Archival. Directive issued by authority above Olympus level. Seeing this, Kairos already had a general understanding. From this perspective, the Alliance had probably known very early on about the side effects that would come from fully activating the Genesis engine. They simply didn't care at all. But at the same time, this document also made Kairos realize one thing. Perhaps when the Genesis engine was first researched, its initial purpose wasn't what it was today. To find other clues, he would probably need to approach that Chief Science Officer Miles more directly. With this thought, he deleted all access records and left the database area, heading toward the core office district of the Science Department building. According to Lila, Miles's office was on the top floor. Kairos rode the silent magnetic levitation elevator upward. The good news was that he was the only one in the elevator. When he arrived at the floor where the director's office was located, a female secretary in a black uniform stopped him. "Stop! Who are you looking for? Do you have an appointment?" "I'm looking for Director Miles." Kairos spoke. "Mason asked me to bring something over." The secretary frowned, clearly having no recollection of this name. "The director is in seclusion at Test Area 0 and refuses any disturbances. If you don't have an appointment, please leave." Kairos wasn't anxious. He simply remembered the name Test Area 0 and turned to walk toward the public rest area nearby to sit down. Several researchers there were leaning wearily on sofas, conversing in low voices. The load exceeded standards again this time. If this continues, the higher UPS are pushing too hard. The deadline is almost here. Director Miles's hair has gone much whiter. The key is still that star stone. We can't find a replacement. Forcing activation will definitely cause problems, but those idiots above don't care about any of this. Speechless. I heard General Quinn's faction is the most anxious. Really can't understand what they're trying to do. Starstone? Kairos caught this keyword. It seemed this was what the engine needed for stable operation, and the Alliance was frantically searching for a replacement. He turned and left this place, sending a message to Lila. Test Area 0. That name sounded like the most core area. Finding it on his own would be too slow. Fortunately, Lila's reply came quickly, also accompanied by a series of images, roughly showing the method to reach Test Area 0. Following this guidance, Kairos traversed through the building for a while, took a separate elevator, and finally arrived at the entrance to Test Area 0. Just as he had predicted, the security level here was clearly much higher. Chapter 249 The Dispute of Three Factions, a Risky Method? 4 fully armed guards with sharp eyes stood at the entrance. Floating beside them were 2 magnazones emanating powerful electrical currents, their cannons aimed down the corridor. The energy barrier beside the gate emitted a dangerous blue glow. Clearly, any unauthorized intruder would be instantly obliterated. Conventional methods couldn't get him in silently. However, this wasn't really a problem. Kairos retreated to a surveillance blind spot and called out softly, "It's up to you." Ghostly red flames silently ignited at his feet, and the chandelier elegantly emerged from the shadows. "Take me through without triggering the alarm." The ghostly fire in chandelier's eyes flickered. Invisible ghost-type energy rippled out like water waves, enveloping both Kairos and itself. Their figures instantly became ethereal and transparent, like shadows merging with the air. Kairos felt his body lighten, as if he had lost physical form. Following chandelier, he passed through the energy barrier without any obstruction, as easily as passing through a water curtain. Beyond the barrier was a long corridor constructed entirely of high-strength alloy, with a huge circular observation window at the far end. As he approached, the scene before him made him pause. Beyond the observation window was an incredibly massive underground space. Countless thick pipes glowing with energy light converged toward the center of the space like blood vessels. There, a massive mechanical construct slowly rotated. It was composed of countless precise metal rings, gears, energy conduits, and crystal arrays inscribed with glowing runes. The whole thing emitted terrifyingly palpable energy fluctuations. Sensing it roughly, it was actually comparable to chandelier's aura. This was the core of the Genesis engine. At this moment, its rotation speed was uneven, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. The light at its core also flickered on and off, clearly in an extremely unstable state. Just standing here, Kairos could feel that oppressive energy pressure, as if it could tear space apart. He withdrew his gaze and found a control room beside the observation window, pushing the door open. Inside, the lighting was dim, with only countless holographic screens emitting a ghostly red glow, displaying cascading data streams like waterfalls. Heavy smoke permeated the air. At the desk, a disheveled man sat hunched over behind a table piled with papers. His hair was unkempt, his beard unshaven, his eyes bloodshot as he stared fixedly at the largest holographic screen before him. On the screen was a complex energy model, with huge red numbers marked beside it 97.8%. That was the predicted failure probability of forcibly starting the engine. Scattered on the table were half-eaten energy bars and several empty energy drink bottles. Not enough, energy dissipation, resonator, substitute, can't find. The man unconsciously muttered, his fingers continuously tapping the tabletop, looking dazed. Kairos didn't hide his footsteps and walked straight over. The man suddenly looked up, his bloodshot eyes full of rage at being disturbed and a trace of confusion. Who let you in? Get out! His roar suddenly stopped. He had seen the hand Kairos extended before him and the cold black iron tag in that hand, engraved with the gear unlightening symbol. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. The rage on Miles's face instantly vanished, replaced by shock and disbelief. He stared fixedly at that iron tag as if seeing a ghost. His lips trembled, and after a long while he struggled to squeeze out a few words. Mason, he's still alive? He sent you? Yes. Kairos put away the iron tag. He told me to find you, Director Miles. Miles seemed to have all his strength drained away, collapsing into his chair and looking at Kairos with complex eyes full of wariness. What did he send you to do? Watch me make a fool of myself? Watch how I personally create a monster that will destroy the world. Mason sent me here because I want to know the truth, Kairos said, looking directly at Miles. About the Genesis engine, about the Alliance leadership's true purpose. And what forcibly starting the engine will actually bring. Miles was silent for a long time, his eyes shifting between despair and struggle. Finally, perhaps because the name Mason carried enough weight, he let out a long sigh. The truth. He smiled bitterly. The truth is, we opened Pandora's box and can't control it at all. He pointed at the failure rate on the screen and continued, the most optimistic estimate for the consequences of forced activation is triggering partial energy imbalance in the Earth's core, causing the geological structure within a radius of 300 kilometers centered on the engine to completely collapse. The lower districts will collapse like sandcastles, more than half gone, countless people buried alive. That's just the physical disaster. At worst. He sighed. The entire planet's ley line system will be destroyed by the engine, and the chain reaction that triggers, global ecological extinction, energy storms sweeping the surface, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, drastic climate change, above ground and below, nowhere will be safe. Kairos frowned slightly. It seemed his intuition was correct. It appeared that if the engine was directly activated, the situation would be much worse than he had imagined. No wonder the Alliance hadn't acted yet. He asked, if that's the case, why would the Alliance take such a risk? Don't they know? Just to maintain their rule, aren't they afraid of such an outcome? Why? Miles seemed to hear a joke. No. I think you've got it wrong. The engine's initial plan was indeed to stabilize the underground energy supply so we could barely survive underground. But, the Alliance discovered the true situation of the surface world. He looked up at Kairos, his gaze sharpening. You're from the lower district, you should know, the Alliance has always promoted that the surface world is a death zone full of lethal radiation and toxic dust, right? That's all lies. All fake. Kairos nodded. Of course I was on the surface just last week and even met molters. How could I not know? Miles continued, the surface world is indeed recovering its vitality, vegetation, water sources, fresh air, that's humanity's future home, but... His tone suddenly became agitated. There have also appeared some life forms we cannot understand or resist. Strange Pokémon have appeared on the surface with incredible powers. Our military forces are no match for them. Deep fear showed in Miles's eyes, as if recalling some terrible scene. The first small-scale reconnaissance team encounter 5 latest model mechs, 20 well-trained Magnazones and Bish ARPs, total annihilation. Didn't even last 3 minutes. Those creatures, too terrifying. No matter how much the surface world recovers, if these things occupy it, it has no meaning for us. So, the plan changed. The war faction, led by General Quinn. Oh wait, he's been captured now. The one jumping around most now is Colonel Walker. They've gone completely mad. Miles showed a helpless expression. They believe that since we can't reclaim the surface world, we should just destroy it. Use the Genesis engine at full power to forcibly tear the ley lines and create a disaster covering the surface. That way, we can at least have a quiet surface. But the cost is what I just mentioned. Large-scale collapse of the lower districts, countless casualties. Plus that 97.8% failure rate potentially triggering global extinction. But in their view, the former sacrifice is worth it. To purify the surface, for the Alliance's future, no matter how many lower district untouchables die, it doesn't matter. What about the other factions? Kairos interjected. The maintenance faction, led by several bigwigs who control core energy distribution and military factories. Miles curled his lip. They don't care about above or below ground either. They only care about their own power and wealth. They advocate that the engine only needs to operate at enough power to maintain the underground city's luxurious lifestyle and military strength, extracting energy to stabilize the underground. As for whether the lower districts collapse or how many people die, they don't care either. If they collapse, it saves resources. Simply put, they support partial power activation of the engine. Then, is no one opposed? Kairos asked. There is. A trace of faint light finally flashed in Miles's eyes. The Alliance's current leader, Chairwoman Alicia Soren, she represents the moderate faction. She believes the underground city's energy can sustain for a while longer, and the engine absolutely cannot be activated unless absolutely necessary. She advocates putting full effort into finding an alternative to the Star Stone, or finding something that can resonate with life energy. She believes only that way can the engine slowly extract energy for the underground city without harming the ley lines or triggering disaster, then slowly seek solutions to the surface world's problems. Life energy? Kairos asked knowingly. Yes. A gentle, special life energy that can guide energy to flow in an orderly manner. This is the key to changing the engine's nature. But it's too difficult. We've searched through all records, tried countless materials, and nothing can carry and guide that level of life energy. And the war faction and maintenance faction won't wait. They've been pressuring Alicia constantly. 1 month from now, that purification day is the final deadline they set. If within a month we can't find an alternative solution or a life energy medium, the engine must undergo a test run. Once the test run starts, it can never be stopped. Hearing this, Kairos finally completely understood. Behind the Genesis engine were 3 divided factions in the Alliance leadership, the radical war faction, the selfish maintenance faction, and the moderate faction seeking peaceful solutions. And that life energy medium was right here with him. Which faction does Quinn belong to? Kairos confirmed. War faction. Colonel Walker is from his side. Miles answered without hesitation. What about you? Kairos looked at Miles. Which side are you on? Miles let out a long, weary sigh. Me. He pointed at the 97.8% failure rate on the screen, then at his own bloodshot eyes. What do you think? Kid, I know what Mason meant by sending you. He wants me to help. But... He shook his head, his tone heavy. Listen to my advice, leave. This matter runs too deep. It's not something you can participate in. Even the chairwoman is struggling now. What can a kid from the lower district do? You can't change anything. Kairos fell silent. He didn't answer, only slowly took out the world seed from his system inventory. Gentle green light quietly brightened in the dim control room. An incomparably rich life energy fluctuation full of infinite vitality instantly spread out. This, what is this? Miles sprang up from his chair as if struck by electricity. His bloodshot eyes stared fixedly at the seed emitting soft green light in Kairos's hand, his face written with extreme shock and disbelief. As a top research director, he was naturally quite sensitive to energy fluctuations. He clearly felt that pure, magnificent power. This feeling. Could this be? Kairos didn't explain, only directly put away the world seed. That rich life aura instantly disappeared. Miles still maintained his posture with hands braced on the table, body leaning forward. He panted heavily, eyes staring fixedly at Kairos. That thing, where did you get it? What exactly is it? His voice was distorted from excitement. That's confidential for now. Kairos smiled slightly. If you want to know, you might need to help me with a few things. Miles looked at Kairos's young yet unusually composed face, then thought of that life radiance just now. After the immense shock, a faint spark called hope reignited in the depths of his desperate heart. This young man, perhaps. You, what do you want to do? I need to meet Chairwoman Alicia Soren. Kairos stated his purpose directly. I want to talk with her. Miles seemed to hear a joke, which then turned into bitter laughter. Meet her? Kid, do you know what her status is? Alliance Chairwoman. The highest authority in the entire Alliance. Even I need to schedule far in advance to see her, and might not even get to. With your current identity. He pointed at the dark grey coveralls Kairos wore. Aylin from the lower district? Forget getting close to her, you can't even get through the gate of the administrative core area where she is. The security checks there are 10 times stricter than here. Kairos smiled again. If I really wanted to go, they probably couldn't stop me, but that would definitely be very chaotic, so I came to ask you if there's any way. Miles looked at Kairos's expression, seeming to hesitate about something. He irritably scratched his messy hair and paced back and forth several times in the small control room. Finally, he stopped abruptly, as if making a decision. A method, there is one. He lowered his voice. It's just, might be a bit risky. Oh? What method? Chapter 250 The Banquet at Starlight Hall, Unexpected Turn of Events. A banquet. Miles spoke rapidly. 3 days from now, at Starlight Hall in the Alliance's core district, there will be a very high-level evening banquet. Nominally, it's to celebrate the Alliance's founding anniversary, but in reality, it's an occasion for several major factions to maneuver and probe each other. Chairwoman Alicia, as Alliance Chairwoman, will definitely attend. That's your only chance to approach her calmly. Under what identity? Kairos asked. Janitor. Miles answered extremely quickly. The banquet requires a large number of temporary service personnel, including janitors. I can arrange for you to infiltrate. I'll handle the identity documents. Although it's just the lowest level temporary worker position, it's enough to let you move around in the banquet hall. Kairos thought for a moment and nodded. That works. Then listen carefully. Miles's expression became serious. Security at that banquet is very tight. Chairwoman Alicia has the most elite guards around her, and furthermore, the big shots from both the war faction and the maintenance faction will all be present. Colonel Walker will also be there. He's a very dangerous man. Once you're exposed, you'll surely die, and I'll be finished too. Understand? He stared intently at Kairos. So it's still not too late to back out now. I also think this is too crazy. Don't worry, you won't die. Just tell me the time, location, entry method, and the areas where Chairwoman Alicia is most likely to appear. Kairos wasn't very concerned. Death wasn't going to happen. At most, discovery would be a bit troublesome. Miles looked at Kairos's calm demeanor and finally let out a dejected breath. He didn't know where Kairos's confidence came from, but he knew he definitely couldn't dissuade this young man. I'll send the time, location, and employee passages to that communicator in your hand. As for Alicia, he recalled for a moment. She'll generally give a speech near the main podium, then might briefly stay in the VIP lounge. If she's in a bad mood, she might go alone to the top floor observation terrace to get some air. The view is good there. You can see the artificial starry sky. Understood. Kairos turned to leave. Wait. Miles stopped him. Before you go, can you tell me, what exactly are you? Kairos stopped at the doorway without turning back, his voice coming through clearly. What I am isn't important. He paused. But my purpose is roughly the same as yours. Having finished speaking, he pushed open the door, his figure disappearing into the dim corridor. Miles stood in place, looking at the empty doorway, then lowered his head to look at his own hands, covered in calluses and trembling slightly from overwork. Could this young man called Kairos truly bring a thread of change? Before he could think further, he shook his head slightly as enormous exhaustion and confusion submerged him once more. 3 days later. Aztec City, the Alliance Core District's most magnificent building, Starlight Hall. In a warehouse emanating the smell of cleaning agents and faint machine oil, Kairos changed into the equipment Miles had prepared. A dark blue banquet janitor's jumpsuit with the brim pulled very low, and a matching mask covering most of his face. A spray bottle, a cloth, and a palm-sized portable vacuum cleaner were all his belongings. The temporary work permit Miles provided was already hanging on his chest, the photo a processed, blurry image, the name still Lin. He mixed in with a group of temporary workers similarly dressed in cleaning uniforms with numb expressions, passing through a concealed employee passage into the logistics area of Starlight Hall. Security here was relatively lax, seemingly mainly scanning for weapons or explosives. Aside from cleaning tools, Kairos had nothing on him, and that Chandelure was, as usual, hiding in his shadow. The next moment, the scanner's green light came on. The guard waved his hand, signaling them to pass through. Passing through the noisy kitchen and storage areas, he pushed open a thick soundproof door, and deafening music and clamorous voices instantly flooded over him. Kairos stepped into the main venue of Starlight Hall and observed the environment. This truly was worthy of being an upper city building. It was luxurious. The ceiling overhead was composed of countless pieces of transparent material embedded with luminescent crystals, simulating a brilliant starry sky scene. Countless suspended crystal lamps emitting soft light were dotted throughout like stars. Massive holographic projections shifted in the air, showing the Alliance's logo and magnificent cityscapes. The air was filled with the mixed scent of premium fragrances, fine food, and alcohol. Smartly dressed men and women with smiles on their faces, holding wine glasses, shuttled between giant crystal pillars and dining tables. 4 words to describe it: lavish decadence. Such a scene was completely unlike the same world as the lower city's dilapidated filth. Kairos's gaze quickly swept across the entire venue without lingering too long. He noticed that many guests had Pokémon of various forms following beside them or at their feet. But without exception, all were steel or electric types, which fit this world's circumstances. He saw Magnemite hovering beside waiters, carefully using magnetism to support trays holding small pastries. Several Voltorb and Electrode were tethered by their owners with special energy collars in corners, rolling around boredly, occasionally bursting with electric sparks. Most eye-catching were several wealthy people or officers who appeared to hold extremely high positions, with large-bodied, dangerous aura-emitting Magnezone following beside them. These Magnezone were even weaker in strength compared to those in Quinn's army earlier, probably only at the threshold of Elite 4 level, completely unimpressive. Kairos pulled down his cap brim, picked up the spray bottle and cloth, and, like a truly unremarkable janitor, began wiping along the edges of the mirror-bright railings, cleaning non-existent dust. His gaze simultaneously scanned the entire hall, capturing information. Soon, he locked onto his target. A slight commotion came from the hall entrance. Someone had arrived. It was a beautiful woman. She wore a crisply tailored silver-white gown that outlined her slender figure, with smooth silver hair simply bound behind her head. Her features were delicate, and her eyes were an especially beautiful ice blue color. However, Kairos keenly caught the trace of unmistakable exhaustion deep in her eyes. Clearly, her mind wasn't on the banquet at all. Beside her followed 4 guards in sharp black uniforms, their eyes sharply scanning their surroundings, on guard against anyone who might approach. More eye-catching were the 2 Magnezone hovering at their sides. Their bodies were even more massive than those Kairos had seen before, their metallic shells showing a deep dark silver color, emanating powerful energy fields. These 2 were also at early Elite 4 level. Kairos immediately made this judgment. What surprised Kairos most was the Pokémon hovering at low altitude beside Alicia. It maintained a form about half a person's height, with 4 thick metallic giant claws folded at its sides, its huge silver cross-shaped metal body radiating cold, chilling light. This was a Metagross. Just hovering there, a powerful and condensed psychic pressure permeated outward, causing several nearby hovering Magnemite to tremble slightly and instinctively move away from that area. Peak Elite 4 level. Kairos instantly judged its power level. Given this world's circumstances, this was already among the very pinnacle of trainer strength in the entire world. Alicia's arrival instantly attracted the entire venue's attention. She walked into the hall like a queen, politely but distantly nodding in acknowledgement to important figures who approached to greet her. Almost simultaneously with Alicia's appearance, Kairos's gaze also locked onto another focal point at the other end of the crowd, a man wearing a military uniform. This should be that Colonel Walker. This lean man carried the distinctive bearing of a professional soldier. Kairos confirmed his identity at a glance. Around him gathered several people with similarly cold, hard demeanors who clearly had military backgrounds at first glance. Beside Walker was an Electivire. Kairos assessed its strength roughly early Elite 4 level. This confirmed his earlier judgment was correct. Everyone present combined probably wasn't enough for Chandelure to burn. At this moment, Colonel Walker's gaze lingered on Alicia for a moment, carrying undisguised pressure. His gaze also swept like a searchlight over the staff area. When it swept toward Kairos's direction, Kairos immediately lowered his head, using the cover of wiping a nearby giant crystal pillar to avoid that scrutinizing gaze. Just like that, several minutes later, Alicia finished her brief pleasantries. Seeming to feel fatigued, surrounded by guards, she walked toward the VIP lounge entrance. Kairos immediately pushed a nearby cart loaded with cleaning supplies, following inconspicuously. He needed to find an opportunity for private conversation before Alicia entered the lounge. Using the crowd as cover, he quickly approached near the VIP lounge entrance. Alicia had already reached the door, with guards pulling it open for her. Just as she was about to step into the lounge, Kairos quickened his pace, pretending to clean the carpet near the lounge entrance, moving several meters closer toward Alicia's direction. "Sir!" A guard immediately stepped forward, blocking Kairos's path. His voice was polite, but his tone was firm. "Cleaning isn't needed here. Please leave immediately and work in other areas." As he spoke, his gaze swept over the work badge on Kairos's chest, as if checking something. Alicia didn't even turn to glance at this janitor Kairos. Her steps didn't pause in the slightest as she walked straight into the lounge. The heavy door closed silently behind her. The first approach attempt had clearly failed. The guard's vigilance was extremely high, giving absolutely no chance for any unrelated personnel to approach. However, this didn't exceed Kairos's original expectations. He stood in place, thinking for a moment. Actually, directly breaking in and dragging that Alicia out to talk with him wasn't impossible either. After all these people combined might not be enough for Chandelure to burn with one fire blast. But doing so would leave his trip with no secrecy whatsoever. He still wanted to leave himself some room to maneuver. Just as Kairos was thinking, the atmosphere of the entire banquet hall happened to reach its peak. Dazzling holographic images flickered beneath the ceiling, simulating brilliant galaxies. The guests' laughter, clinking glasses, and Pokémon's low cries mixed into a cacophony. However, at this instant, an extremely discordant, teeth-gritting sharp sound abruptly rang out. Screech! The sound was like a high-speed chainsaw frantically cutting through something. And the source of the sound was precisely the hall's dome, constructed of high-strength alloy and energy shields. Everyone's movements froze, laughter stopped abruptly, leaving only that increasingly loud, increasingly piercing cutting sound scraping against every eardrum. Boom! Following immediately after, faster than the sound, came a violent explosion. A blinding blue-white beam of light fell without warning from the dome's center. It tore through the thick alloy layer like an invisible tsunami, surging out from the fissure, instantly sweeping across the entire hall. The huge crystal chandelier suspended in midair bore the brunt, shattered by the shockwave, and countless fragments poured down like a rainstorm. Next were the surrounding massive light walls. Spiderweb-like cracks appeared instantly, then completely dissipated under another shockwave's tremor, transforming into a sky full of dangerous rain. Frenzied screaming erupted. Fear instantly replaced the previous clamor. The crowd, like exploded ants, frantically pushed and fled in panic, trying to dodge the falling fragments and the energy aftershocks emanating destructive auras. Tables and chairs were knocked over, exquisite food and wine spilled everywhere, and the entire hall instantly fell into complete chaos and panic. At the peak of this chaos, several figures emanating cold metallic luster with bizarre forms flew into the hall from that twisted fissure. They ignored the chaotic fleeing crowd below. Several unfortunate Pokémon and humans in their descent path were instantly blown away by the shockwave from their high-speed dive, or directly struck silent by the dangerous electric arcs dancing around their bodies. Kairos watched this scene, his eyebrows raising slightly. This situation was something he had completely failed to anticipate. Because these attackers that suddenly appeared in the hall were all Paradox Pokémon. What on earth was going on? Dash! His gaze fell on those Paradox species. The leading one had a slender metallic neck with a red glowing single eye sensor at the top. It was iron jugules. Beside it were several iron bundle with bodies emanating chilling cold air. Following immediately after was the massive bodied iron hands. Besides these, there were also several iron valiant. This number was even greater than what he'd seen on the surface before. At a glance, there were dozens. However, carefully sensing their strength, they seemed somewhat weaker. If he wasn't mistaken, they should all be below mid-elite 4 level strength. And the next moment, all these Paradox Pokémon moved. Their target was extremely clear, without the slightest hesitation, directly locking onto the large energy crystal pillar in the hall's center that emanated soft blue light and provided core energy and holographic projections for the entire banquet. All charged toward it. Once this crystal pillar collapsed, the entire banquet hall would be engulfed in violent explosions. At this moment, among the crowd, the Alliance's guards and military personnel also reacted. Enemy attack! Protect the crystal pillar! Stop them!
Additionally, if you would like to request novels and access my Google Drive where I have 200 plus audiobooks, then you can join my Patreon. Link is also provided in the description.